We have November 7th, which we can't do anything with because you weren't here, and we have a standing rule that we don't vote those.
Yep.
So we'll move on to the 20th. And we're all present, so...
I'm going to correct the, you can see there's a red highlighted name there. I'm going to get that fixed.
Just verify the spelling on it.
Yep, and there's some others that need some filling in here, so I'll take care of that.
Sorry.
We're sharing a package tonight, so... We're just starting on the meeting minutes. We'll go back to one that you and I can do. David, we passed over it because David was absent on that particular meeting.
Sorry, I had my horse had to get
Don't worry about it.
pads and studs on.
You want to change chairs? Go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, you want a pillow or not a pillow?
No, she wants a
I
different
think
chair.
that's right.
Here. Musical chairs.
Yeah, but you're supposed to wait till the music to start.
Ding, ding.
Thank you.
Very good.
Greetings, TV land.
We're now, we have these meeting minutes in front of us.
Okay. I did see these. I didn't have any issues.
The only thing we're verifying is that this is spelled correctly and turn it back to
Oh.
black.
Clean up any
right.
little
I was just gonna say, I
missing,
don't-
there's some other name missing there.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah, I don't know what his name is. I can't
I
remember.
got it.
Okay, so we'll,
All right.
any other omissions or observations?
No, I can't remember.
This one?
I have
Yes.
it somewhere.
This is on the 20th, right?
Oh, I thought you were back on the
No, we
7th.
didn't go back to the
Danger.
7th. We're staying on the 20th because we... You have okay?
I'm okay.
With the changes?
Yep.
I'll entertain a motion to accept with the clerical changes that need to be made.
I make that motion.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion?
These are the November 20th?
November
November
20th.
20th.
Okay.
Yep. All those in favor?
Aye.
We'll go back to the 7th, which is this one right here.
Okay.
This is your package.
Oh.
I lost mine, so we're sharing.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought just because I didn't get here in time.
No,
Oh,
I stole
no,
it
that's fine.
boy, since you weren't here.
It's fine. That's fine.
I was cheating the... So,
Do you want me to make a motion on this?
have you had time to
yes.
read it?
Yes. I had read these before.
David, do you understand or have any questions on those?
No, I'm all set.
This was the meeting he missed.
Right, but I'd like us to be able to look at them so we get up to the speed where everybody else is going, and if he has questions, it's the best time to ask it right now since they're in front of us.
There's just, I made a notion. It should have been motion.
No, I think it was a notion,
Yeah, it could have been.
but it's the,
Where is that?
Oh, right
under
here. Right here. It's just a typo. It says I made a notion.
Okay, so as corrected?
that's
Yes.
corrected. Any further discussion? I have a motion from Carolyn, second by myself. Any other further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Make that unanimous. 2 in favor and 1 abstaining,
Yes.
correct?
What's that?
2 in favor and 1 abstaining?
Yes.
Okay. We have 2 people that would like us to change the schedule just a little bit. We have MA here, and we have John Waite who'd like to get to a engagement, a family engagement. So,
Well, that's fine with me.
John,
John or Emma, whoever.
whichever you want to go first, come on up.
So this is the Housing Opportunity Plan.
You may be interested. You might want to come up, too.
I mean, so the housing production.
You may want to stay seated. I'm sorry.
It should be in, this should be in your packets, and
I have, actually, I
Does
left
anybody have a
you left
fancy
it home.
color
Here you
one?
go.
You have an extra one? We'll
Here.
use this one.
But I have the big one.
I'll take the big one.
Yeah.
That's the summary,
Yeah, I have the summary at home.
if you want to reference it.
Okay.
Is there an introduction, or am I giving the introduction?
Go right ahead.
So, you will remember, some of you, many months ago, we sat and said, what are the priorities to the town, especially in terms of getting help from the FERCog for the DLTA?
District Local Technical Assistance.
Thank you. And we determined that our housing was an issue in town, and we wanted to do a housing production plan. So we got some funding through the FERCog, and we've had the help of Alyssa LaRose for the past 6 months or so to help us with a housing production plan. Some of you have been at some of these events, so I don't want to go into too much of the history. Kind of want to get to the findings and more importantly, I think there's the plan, the goals. But I do want to say that we've had a fair amount of public participation to see what the housing production plan, with the first sentence of the executive summary, it says a housing production plan. It helps identify the housing needs of a community and the strategies it will use to make progress in facilitating the development of affordable housing. And it also helps develop a vision that will shape the future of Deerfield as far as where do we put future housing and the types of it. One thing that came up real strong was senior housing. And that obviously we've known because senior housing has been talked about for a long time. It came up, I think, in the 2004 master plan or something.
I have been attending meetings since 1998.
So what was great is some other...
I did your community action statement in 1993, and that was an item.
And lo and behold, we have even more seniors now than we had then. And so it's still an issue. And luckily, some people haven't been burnt out, and so they came. So several seniors have continued to come burnt out. And okay, I won't go.
Still alive.
Okay, thank you. I didn't say that.
No, it's terrible because.
But anyway, so that comes across as a big part of this. The other interesting thing that we really clarified at the beginning of almost every meeting was that affordable housing is really workforce housing, and when you say the actual definition of affordable housing in Massachusetts, 37% of our population in Deerfield is at the income level that kind of fits affordable housing. So this is not something that, it's not low-income housing, it's affordable, it's workforce kind of housing. And although we have, people obviously live here and some people work here, but it's not considered affordable because if you were just a new family or something, you might not be able to afford some of the housing we have in Deerfield. So we want to make sure we have, fine to have some expensive houses, but you want to have some moderate and lower priced ones as well. So some of the things that we also realize that we have less rental housing than we used to. The town rental housing has decreased by 14%, and sometimes rental housing is a good way for people to start when they can't afford a home. So having some more rental housing might not be a bad thing. And then, as I said, home ownership for people who work here. We talked about an average Deerfield police person, what their salary is, and it would be hard for them to afford a home in Deerfield. So that's what we talk about, workforce. And then, of course, senior housing. Almost a quarter of Deerfield's population is going to be over the age of 65 by 2035. But it's growing as we speak.
It does.
Yep. So, if you want to live here,
You have to wait that far, but that's okay.
if you want to live here, this is
Some of
important.
us are waiting just single digits.
And so then the other question is, okay, if there is going to be new housing, which we all also assume that there will need to be new housing. I've been on the planning board for over 6 years now, and I can tell you, we don't have a lot of new housing going into the town. But there probably will be some. It's a nice place to live, so there will be some demand. We anticipate some demand for housing over the years. So that's the other thing about planning ahead.
But John, are we going to be able to do some incentive? Because, I was on the board for 21 years, and the kind of houses that get built are not affordable housing.
And that's
nobody comes and there's no profit or low profit on low-income housing or moderate-income housing.
So we're going to get to that quickly, but
Okay.
a couple other little background things. So where to put it is an issue because we also have open space and natural resources and farms we want to preserve. So what came through the forums was around the center, around South Deerfield is a good place where people can. We also want to increase pedestrian friendliness and things, but there could also be a use for some co-housing, some kind of more densely new subdivisions kind of thing that might make sense some places around Deerfield. But we did look at where water and sewer is and try to make use of infrastructure that already exists. We also talked about how I know some people are afraid of having new families in town because it increased the cost of the schools. Well, apparently our public school has a declining enrollment, and in fact, having too few students could be a problem for the size of the buildings and the teachers and everything we have. So I think that's not as big an issue as maybe people tend to think it is, or
Well, the
Still
budget's
isn't
not
thought it
going
was.
down with the declining population.
Yeah, John.
right. But you still want kids in the school. So,
Well, yeah.
right. So I don't think it's like having more families in town isn't necessarily a bad thing, especially if they pay taxes. So, and then we have, lots of numbers about the incomes of people and the prices of homes. So then we get to our goals, and it's, mixed housing, seniors, as well as workforce housing. And then some of the strategies to get there. So that's on page 6 and 7 of the executive, 6, 7, and 8. And that's really where I think this document is really great. In the very long document, I don't know where it's obviously.
I didn't see it in the.
Obviously near the end, but there are some strategies. One of which is to make zoning changes. We talked about potentially accessory apartments, or two-family homes, multifamily homes, dwellings that are incidental to commercial use, conservation subdivisions, inclusionary zoning. These are things that right now our zoning bylaws don't, it makes it difficult, or they don't permit, or they don't permit in some of the places that we would like them to permit. So speaking from the planning board, we would like to look at our zoning bylaws to see how we can change them to make it easier to have different types of housing. And on that note, there's another, what's the DL for again?
District Local Technical Assistance.
District Local Technical Assistance, that might be on your next agenda, actually. Or
Not this night, yeah, the
but
following
another night.
agenda, yeah.
Where we could get some more assistance from the FERCog paid for through DHCD to help us with these zoning bylaw changes, which I can tell you, they're not the most exciting things, but you have to do it. I've been on the board, the planning board, worked on some zoning issues, not as exciting as medical marijuana, but you need to, we need to make those changes in order to give incentives or take away disincentives for people to do a variety of housing. Then some of the other things is there are some town-owned sites, including the old Oxford property, and then out at Brayborn Road. So they were looked at as potentially the town can have an influence on what goes in there. And then there's some privately owned sites around town, the St. James Church and Rectory.
That's been sold.
Oh, good. Okay, so it'll be interesting to find out what might go on there. We've always talked about the Hotel Warren as a potential senior housing. There's a private property up 247 Greenfield Road, up by Douglas Auction House, that's been on sale for a little while. That's kind of a big building that could be, housing. I think that's on water.
Huh?
The old Gables.
Oh, the old Gables?
Is that on water and
It's not-
sewer?
No, it's not.
It's a little off of it, maybe.
It's on water, sure.
But it wouldn't be going into farmland, is why we kind of said, let's look at reuse of existing buildings. And then some of the other strategies is, we have our Community Preservation Committee, and we have the Community Preservation Fund, whatever we call that. And that is supposed to, some of it has to be used for affordable housing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think ideally, a bunch of it would be. So
Well,
we
that's
might
what
have a
I think-
resource there.
Well, that's what I was thinking that we would do, is partner with somebody private, because we can't seem to get the Housing Authority to do anything with us after 12 years of meetings,
Well,
or 13 years of meetings.
Let me say that at all of our meetings, MJ Adams was there, at a lot of them anyway, and she works for the Housing Authority. We know the director of the Housing Authority lives in Deerfield. I don't know that. So anyway, the Housing Authority is a great resource, and I think we haven't used it, and making more contact with them. So actually, one thing we want is to have someone on the CPC, because right now we don't have a designated housing person on the CPC. And so if we work with the Housing Authority to have them appoint someone, which I think is what our policies say. So that's something we can do.
I
That
think our policy is we have somebody that's a champion for it. I don't think it has to come from the Housing Authority.
The bylaw actually says, the CPC bylaw for Deerfield actually says a representative from the Franklin Regional Housing Authority. And I guess the discussion about this has been going on for years with the CPC coalition. Because of the way the state law reads, the person can't be a designee. We can't just give them a name of someone from Deerfield. That they have to actually be on the board of the Housing Authority. And they have some open seats, so I said, why don't you put someone from Deerfield on your board?
And there is someone who's
Or
called
you
us
can
wants
change
to be on.
possibly change the bylaw,
That's,
so,
we really need to get it off of the dime, and
right,
however we're gonna get it off the dime needs to stop worrying about the semantics of it.
right.
We need to start making decisions that are going to make things happen, and if we need to change bylaws, we'll change bylaws, and everybody's well-intentioned and we're doing want to do the right thing.
This is
The
similar to
reality is it's time for the right thing to be, that we get something in housing and.
So one of the other strategies is and this is, well, you can agree or disagree. One of the things I think is that we've had volunteers committees, and no one's like, it's just really, I don't think anybody's real priority. There's no one in the town office that's what their job is. So whether we want to have someone, and this would probably be a new position, either part-time or not, is that's really focused on that. And so, some towns have, a housing coordinator position in town. Another thing that came up is even a planning person in town. Things are changing. Deerfield is growing a little bit, and things are getting more complicated. And I can tell you from the planning board, we use the administrative folks a lot, and they're great. But if you want to be proactive and really have something happen, you need to have people that are dedicated to it, I think, or at least part of their jobs. And in conjunction with that is, because I know it's all about money, other towns are having some of these same issues. And so, if we looked at, we've done a lot of joint things with Sunderland and Conway and Whately before. So whether that's a discussion we could have is try to find someone who could help.
John, why would we not use the FERCog planning agency?
FERCog or housing? You mean the housing authority?
You mean the planner?
You mean as a
Way we were
planner?
doing that.
Yeah.
I don't know if the housing is there because of the housing authority. And it's not like we're not going to work with the housing authority, but just having someone.
Oh, so this planner
because I
person
think
would be
the
a
other
housing.
thing that happens is most housing is built by private people, private entities, and most affordable housing is done by private people. But you need someone out there working with those private folks. The housing authority is great if you want 4 affordable units and designate a place and have them go out and get grant money and do it. But I think we want a mix of maybe some of that, but also just getting some of our developers to do 10, 20%. If they do 10 units, have 3 or 4 of them. And so you need someone to be able to talk to them from the get-go, not like after they come to the planning board and change their plans, but to try to get it to
Where
them early.
we had a project big enough that 10 or 20% would be able to do it. Most of them have 2 to 3 units, and 10 to 20% means you're going to have an in-law
Right,
apartment.
Right. So unless you're doing
Multiple
10,
6
12,
10,
and there aren't a
we
lot of
could
places to do
We could
that.
easily cover that, but I think the real guts of this whole thing is we need the plan. And without a plan, without us saying this is where we want to have this, nobody's going to stick their neck out and say, I'm going to be part of this, because the town is going to, I don't want to use the word sabotage, but sabotage the events because everybody has an opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And the process is we need to get a plan, we need to get it in front of the town at a meeting and say, this is what we want to do, and get the okay.
Well, on that
We'll
note-
still have the naysayers, but we can still go through and make this happen.
So tonight, you're asked to endorse or adopt, I think adopt, the housing production plan that you have in front of you. And then this will go to, and the planning board adopted this 2 weeks ago unanimously.
And you saw it 2 weeks ago for the first time, everybody reviewed it. for the
No,
first
we've been
time.
working on it. There was
For a very long time.
There's nothing new in the final document. So it's an accumulation of everything that's been going on.
I'd ask that instead of trying to adopt it today, let us read through the process and bring it back on our next agenda to,
Ooh, I would encourage you to adopt it based on the fact that you sent it off to the planning board to oversee this and lead it, and we've done that. And we adopted it unanimously, 7-0. You've been
So why
invited to
are
all
we-
the meetings along the way.
Why are we adopting it if you have?
It needs both. Then it goes to DHCD. After your adoption, then you send it to DHCD. They approve it. Then the other thing that this has to do with is that 40B issue. That right now, a developer could come in and use the 40B and build all kinds of things that might not be appropriate in Deerfield. By adopting this and getting DHC to approve it, it kind of gives us, we still don't have 10% affordable housing, but we have a plan to move towards that. And as long as we start to implement it and start to move towards it, we can have some defense against 40B development. So that's kind of the stick. The carrot is, we want to do the right thing. The stick is, we don't want to have 40B come in and do things that might not be appropriate. So I'm not sure if the end of the year is some big deadline. I know it's what Alyssa asked for.
I don't have a cover letter here.
Thought we were going to get it. Because we do want to get it to DHCD so that we can start the new year, at least in there, them knowing we have this housing production plan in place.
I don't see a sign-off sheet on it. Did you sign off on the plan that you recall?
No, we voted to adopt it.
Okay.
So, I don't want to put pressure, so that's fine, 2 weeks is probably fine or whatever. But I don't know if you're going to spend a lot of time on it. I'm here to answer any questions you have. It's not this plan itself doesn't say we have to do anything.
Right.
It just gives us a lot of good ideas. It gives us a lot of data. It gives us input from the community. So it's not, we're not making huge decisions, but we are moving it forward, just like you said. I thought that's when you said we want to move it forward. I thought you were saying let's adopt it and move it forward.
Well, I have to admit, when I picked up my package on Friday, it disappeared somewhere in my travels from here. Then
well, I can give you this now that I looked at it.
No, I know where it is now. The bank called me and said it's sitting on their desk. So unfortunately, I didn't make it back to town yesterday or today to pick it up. So I will. I'll apologize, but I would like to read it and run through it.
Yeah. And like I said, the thick thing, there's a lot of photos in here and charts, so it's not as dense as it maybe
All right,
looks.
well, just according to your PowerPoint,
Yeah.
it requires adoption by the planning board and the Board of Selectmen. It gets submitted to DHC for review. This says draft stamped all over it, so DHCD reviews it and will notify us if it's deficient in any of the required elements. And they will review it. Then they have 90 days to review it. And the effective date is when DHCD approves it.
Mm-hmm.
If there's any amendments, they can be submitted for approval. So you can read this and you can,
Amend it?
yeah.
Yeah, actually.
I have no problem with it.
I think we'd have to talk with Alyssa for guidance on amendment procedure if there is something that goes
Well,
with
if we're
that,
gonna,
but-
if we get into it deep enough that we're talking about amendments, and we're doing a really wonderful job, and I'll be all for it. So
Yeah,
I don't mind going through the extra work to do an amendment if we're actually doing the work to start the ball rolling. So I don't have a problem with getting it off the dime, kicking off the dime, as long as, I didn't want a letter that we were committed to
No.
without us having a chance to at least do a due diligence.
And even when I started naming like properties there, properties can go on and off this list. That's just examples.
All right.
Properties that might be
Well,
looked at for.
I-
Yeah.
Every piece of property is on the chopping block as far as I'm concerned. I mean, this place might make a nice senior center with some nice wings with second floor, apartments on it and everything else. I don't have a problem. So I'm really enthusiastic about trying to find something that we can give a better place for our seniors to have quality of life.
And then, as I said, we have had this subcommittee, and I think we want to keep that, and get some more members on it.
I just have to say, I think one of the, really the goals of the CPA was to have this kitty, that we would partner with a private person, because that's the problem, John. If it's a for-profit individual, they're not going to do workplace kind of housing or affordable housing or senior housing.
Without some
You have to,
incentives,
right.
yeah.
So if we provide land and we provide a kitty, then we should be able to find a partner. And that was the goal, because, like I said, we have not been successful with regional housing
The other
authority.
aspect of it is we have a village that's laid out fairly nicely, and it can be accented fairly nicely with some housing that would allow workforce and elderly to complement each other quite well. And I mean, I can remember, growing up with the elderly babysitting me, and it was a great partnership. My father and mother worked. My mother worked right after we went into elementary school, and basically the neighbors were fantastic. And Sophie would be would take us and make sure that we didn't do anything.
No, I agree.
Boxed our ears many
But
times.
that's one of our accessory apartment things. Right now, you can do it with a relative, I think.
Yes.
But there's a lot of non-relatives who you might also want to have in an accessory apartment, which might provide a good,
Well,
stable
Just
you
getting
know,
them into the same area of town works pretty nicely, too. And
It goes with that whole streetscape plan, too.
Right.
I mean, it's all.
And that's what I
it
mean.
all-
Well, it's supposed to be walkability and sociability of our
again, it-
downtown.
it goes back into
more
looking at
vital.
the big plan.
Yep. And I don't know, you know, there's another topic is the Oxford RFP, but it'll be interesting if that goes out, if someone
Well,
comes
we
back and says
really-
they want to do some housing units there as well as some office or retail.
We'd really like to get that back on the tax
Well,
rolls.
But as we looked at it, at one point, if housing's a part of it, it makes the
Oh, yeah,
economics of
no.
it better sometimes.
Yeah.
But their actual recommendation for that parcel was not housing.
At
was
one point, we had
interesting.
3 different ones. One was housing and, always mixed use was what it was.
Okay.
Yeah, it was not totally housing, but mixed use.
Housing was always a thought that was in there, just as long as it was a controlled.
Like townhouses or, you know, not big, single-family things. But
Yeah. We had the
Have a lot of
bidders conference for the RFP for that,
Last
and there
week,
were
yeah.
about 5 or 6 people there. I would say, I know at least 2 of them do primarily housing work, but we'll see. I'm sorry, I can't remember the deadline right now, but the
January
deadline for
31st, I
proposals,
think.
is that the
Yeah,
deadline
Yeah,
for the
I
proposals?
saw and looking at today, so.
Right, you were there.
So, that's what I have, Doc.
So you ready to
So
sign up?
I will, unless you want to decide tonight, I will put it on your next agenda.
I have no problem with the fact that we can amend it. And again, as long as it's an amendment process, I have no problem with approving it with the pleasure of the board.
I don't have any problem either. I did read it.
I don't have a problem with it.
I'll take a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Sure.
Once it's been approved here and approved by who else?
The planning board adopted it 2 weeks ago at our meeting.
But
But
it
it
goes
has to
to
go
the
through,
Housing Authority.
Department of Housing and Community Development
Once
in
it goes
Boston.
there, do the amendments have to have their approval? In other words, if you amend it,
Yes.
I would assume yes.
so you can't amend it without their approval?
It
Correct.
says substantial amendments should be submitted to DHCD for approval. It does not change the effective date of the plan.
No, but
So we
but
get-
it means you can't amend it.
Well, no, it said it should be, and it said substantial. And
Exactly.
Basically, those are 2 weasel words that allows you to think about, you know, what is it changing and how is it changing? The amount of work that these people have done is astronomical, and they've already put a lot into it. Our reviewing it over a week is not going to make a substantial amount of amendments to these documents, no matter whether I spent the whole week or not doing it. I just didn't want to put us into a box without at least having the due diligence of reading through the whole thing. I do not mind us, with their approval, unanimous approval, going forward
No,
with it.
I'm just saying that even though it says you can amend it, the likelihood of being able to amend it is limited.
I don't agree.
Yeah, I just won't submit it.
Yeah,
Or somebody outside of the town to approve your amendment.
Substantial amendments should be submitted to DHCD for approval.
Right.
Yes.
Should, but we don't have to.
It's very,
I would
Please
suggest
award.
that indicates that you're not,
I would suggest we're not going to make substantial amendment.
And I don't, it's only year to year anyway, so.
how good
Well,
is this
it-
plan for?
It's a
It's a
plan. And the
plan.
thing is, it's always changing, so I'm
Right.
not sure what, I think substantial
Right.
amendments has to be really
I
big.
thought, my understanding was it was only good for 2 years.
It depends on what you do. We,
And it might not even, if we don't meet the goals, then it's
the
out the
idea is
door
that we'll do
anyway.
11 affordable units in the first year.
Right.
and
And
11
if we
actually
don't
each
meet
year,
that,
until we get up to the-
then we're out the door anyway.
We resubmit.
Yeah.
Again, I'm at a point where I would like to see us moving things forward than finding reasons not to move forward.
Exactly.
If I have to fight the battle of an amendment, I'll work through
It's not
that.
going to be any.
And as I said, I've been to several of the meetings. I didn't make all of them by any stretch of the imagination, but they were very good people, very conscientious about what they were doing. I trusted that as it was at the meetings, their thoughts around what is the town of Deerfield. And I think that if nothing else, kicking it off the curb and have somebody getting really excited about it and wanting to change it is going to get people interested in it.
That's a good point.
So,
Well,
from my point of view, sitting buried on a desk table at this point in time is not going to do any good. In 1 week's or 2 weeks' time, is not gain us a lot of ground, so
My thoughts were that if this would leverage us another opportunity for senior housing money at some point, because we have this filed, we can use this as an excuse to, or get extra credit, yeah. To get the check off.
Cross that one out.
To get the check off, if we can, if there is any monies available. And like I said, we're really the idea was to partner with somebody private because we haven't been successful. So if we have a leveraging pot of money for the CPA, we have a private individual who's willing to work with us, maybe the state would kick in some money after all, and so we could have a decent number of senior units. But, I mean, it's been really, really awful that we haven't been able to get senior housing.
And another thing that's less big and exciting, but you can also get some funds to help seniors improve their housing to make it more livable right now. Because that was one of the things the survey said, is seniors, they want to live in their house as long as they can. And so setting up, working with the Housing Authority to get one of these funds where you can put railings and wheelchair ramps and things like that becomes part of this too.
But part of the issue, if you get senior housing, then the housing stock turns over and younger families or whatever move into the
But that's where the
houses.
accessory apartment comes in too. So a lot of that stuff is in here in smaller chunks, kind of.
And that's what the normal cycle is. The seniors would move to senior housing, and then you get younger families in, and you're not actually adding a lot of housing stock and using your open space, but you've brought in younger families, and you've been able to retain your seniors into better housing, which is what we should really be focusing on. So
I just wanted to address the concerns that Skip brought up, which is that really this is just a plan. The next step is zoning, if there needs to be changes in the zoning, and you have plenty of local control over that, whether you adopt it or not, or how you move that around. And then there's the actions that the planning or the ZBA takes, boards take, and Conservation Commission, I suppose, when proposals come forward. So this is just a plan, and that's the state involvement. The rest is up to you, and you have local control over those things. So.
any further questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion on the floor?
Aye.
Make that unanimous, please. Thank you very much, and hopefully you make your engagement.
Thank you.
Any other questions or concerns?
So I will bring the annual request from FERCog for district local technical assistance projects. They're planning and they're regional shared services type projects. I'll have that for you at your next meeting. John has already submitted some ideas, and I'll have some possibly for shared services as well for your consideration.
And I'd add that it wouldn't have got done, and it certainly wouldn't have gotten done so well without Alyssa from the FERCog. So this technical assistance is great. You need it.
We take a great advantage of their services. Yeah.
Well, the thing I remember from last year when you submitted the list was the fact that we did it at a midnight madness. We had to do it all because the deadline was here.
Oh,
So-
that's,
They don't give you much
unfortunately,
time.
They don't
give
give
us
you
much time.
So what I would recommend is
I will give
telling
you a
people-
heads up.
well, I would let others who can use these technical grants, be it the senior center, the library,
Yeah.
and those people know that these things are available, and the energy committee.
already asked you for some help with that same thing.
But again, let it,
Solar stuff, so.
Oh, right.
so let's,
Communities,
move through
yeah.
this.
Cool. Thanks. Have a good evening.
One second.
All right.
So we have Dan Lawrence here.
And he's here for,
I think Mass.
If we have questions about the contract. He surprised us, but I just had this on I told energy folks to come at 6:30 because I didn't have anything scheduled before then to quickly just talk about this. You already signed off at a meeting Mark was not at, the two of you were at, on these midnight shutoffs, and then we have this hold harmless agreement that WMECO would like us, Western Mass Electric, would like us to sign, and if you want to speak to that, that'd be great.
Yeah, I don't really understand why WMECO wants this signature, but I understand what they say, and that is that they haven't ever implemented midnight shutoffs in Massachusetts. They have them in Connecticut. So they just said, what do you do? What do you do? And they said, here's our paperwork. And so they said, here's our paperwork. So with the shutoffs that we did, there was nothing. But with the midnight shutoffs, they have an additional document that they want signed. So it's up.
Yeah, Dave
You
has it in
have it,
front
I
of him.
think, yeah.
It's in your file.
And so that's the explanation that it shows up now and it hasn't showed up before.
Should be at the top of the pile there.
Oh, okay. Right here? No.
No,
Well, that's my copy, but it should be in the top of your,
I'm not worried about it. I
We have
understand
to
it.
sign it.
You
Okay.
understand?
I
Okay.
understand it. I don't have it.
Fine.
So,
I don't know if she can't see it or wants to read
No,
it.
no, 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 no. I thought she wanted us to sign it. This is the one we're going to sign.
Original, ours
at
are
some
all
point,
written all
somebody
over.
needs to sign something, but
Okay.
that's true. And so that's what this is.
Right.
I made up, just for interest's sake, well, this is the document that they sent us as far as costs and savings goes, and I sort of translated it a little bit. So that you can
user-friendliness?
see the electricity costs and the,
Oh, okay, thanks.
now, I cannot guarantee you that these numbers are absolutely accurate because electric charges change pretty regularly. This is the best I could find. Oh, sorry.
nope, just give me,
I have
okay.
something
Fine, it's okay. We're fine.
$1,900 a year is good savings.
here. There's extra copies. So, this is just, phase one was the shutoffs, the 37 shutoffs that we did. And that the savings is $3,800 a year on that. This is phase two. This is the midnight shutoffs, 59 midnight shutoffs, and 22 of the lights will also have a lumen reduction. That's going to save $1,900 each year. And then the third phase is when we do lumen reductions, and that, I don't know what that is because I don't know what the numbers are going to be yet as far as how many there are. It needs to be just there's a general list out there, but it'll be adjusted as we go through, as this one was. But I would guess it's going to be considerably more substantial than phase two. So I'm expecting that it'll be well over $5,000 that we'll be saving by saving the town by the all three phases of this light
Well,
reduction.
I'm intrigued by the fact that I think that in the first time in many years, I've seen a reduction in the technology of lumen reduction or wattage reduction instead of lumen reductions. So that there are equipment out there now that is affordable that we can drop the amount of wattage used at a light
Yeah.
substantially without losing the lumens in that process. In the past, it was so cost prohibitive to do because you never got it back. It never paid for itself.
Yeah.
So I think that in this coming year, you'll see that the electric companies will start embracing the change out of lights for lumens, dropping wattage.
Wattage versus.
Right, they're not going to charge us anything for that lumen reduction, any other lumen reduction. The only thing that they're charging us for are the midnight shutoffs.
But
So it's free.
I thoroughly understand that.
Oh, okay.
But if we can keep places that need to be illuminated
Oh, I
at
see.
half or a
Yeah.
third of the price, and we can
Right.
get our payback back in 2 to 3 years,
Right.
or they get their payback in credits, as long as we play the game,
Right,
they get it back in 2 or 3 years, it makes a lot more sense. In the past, it was never really profitable to
I see
look
what you're
at.
saying, yeah.
So now, be prepared that, I'm assuming that we'll see some rollouts.
Well, and
At the
it'll
MMA
come
conference?
from them, is what you're saying.
It will come from both, because right now, Boston and a lot of the bigger cities are doing wholesale changes of this stuff.
Right.
They're saving,
Well, especially with LEDs and stuff, it's
yeah,
phenomenal.
and the
Yeah.
phenomenal amount of money they're saving, and technology, because they're doing it,
Right.
has come along to be a lot less, because when you make gazillions of something, it's a lot cheaper than making 2 or 3 of them.
Right.
So
Greenfield
I'm
is
hoping to bring,
putting in LEDs. Most any town that owns their own lights
Right.
is doing this.
right. And the
And
thing is,
I would love to look at owning our own lights at some point, but I'm not bringing that up here.
I think that it's
We
worth
had
looking
gone
at
back and
at this
forth on
point.
that.
Yeah, but we did because the payback, and now I think
Right,
the
but I
payback's
think,
gotten
you know,
there.
I think
it's
it's,
changed.
I think it's something that
Agree with
at
Mark.
some point, I mean, this all is fine to do anyhow.
Right.
I don't think it's something, and I think, you know, I think that, I don't see, even when we're done with Phase 3, I don't see this as a completed project.
Right.
I think that there's a
I
lot.
just wanted to prep you that we're got to be starting thinking outside the box
Right.
and looking for better ways to save money across the board.
Unica was talking to us about possibly doing a pilot project with LEDs. They were talking to us a year or so ago, and they pulled that.
Right.
I think,
We were
you know,
fully involved, and I think that what happened was that they started to get scared.
yeah,
And-
right. So they pulled it, but it may come back,
Right.
and that's what I would hope.
Very good.
So that's pretty much all I have.
We had one streetlight that came to me through the chief that was, I think was inadvertently turned off on Sugarloaf Street. Did he talk to you, or has that been resolved?
No, but
That's
it,
the Risley,
Yeah.
Yeah, in front of Risley's.
I mentioned it to you.
yeah, you
that
did mention it to me.
has been-
That could have been just burned out, because sometimes they burn out.
We know
just-
the pole.
I just, basically, if something comes out of it, because it's a safety issue,
If the light was turned off,
we don't know.
I don't think there's one there. I think they,
No, there was one there and it was turned
Across the
off, or
street.
it burnt out, whichever
Across
the case may be.
street, I hear.
Yeah.
Right
And
across the street.
basically, during their events, a lot of people are leaving in the dark.
right.
So all I did was tell the chief, just in case it came back to you, I just told the chief, it's
Yeah,
a safety
it's-
issue, fix it.
From my point of view, the Energy Committee is not the end source of this. We are the beginning of the process. It then goes to the police, and then it goes to you. So coming
I don't- I
back,
didn't-
I don't think it needs to come back to us in that
Courtesy.
sense.
It's a
As a
courtesy.
courtesy, that's fine.
That's all I'm saying.
I
I'm
have
giving you.
been- Yes,
Yeah,
I did.
As a courtesy thing, I
hear
would
about
like
that.
everybody being on the
Right,
same
yeah.
page, so that
Yeah.
if I do something, I act on what I know.
Yeah.
And my skill set.
Yeah.
And basically,
Yeah,
if
I
it's a
don't- I
safety
haven't-
issue, we'll correct it
haven't-
and deal with the consequences later. I'm not going to challenge the safety issues if the chief brings it to us.
Right, I
and
think,
the fire.
you know, I mean, when there's a wake or a funeral there, and it's after dark,
Mm-hmm.
people park the whole length of Sugarloaf,
Yes, on
oftentimes.
some of them, yes.
And so that one light might provide some safety for those people crossing the
Crossing.
street right there.
Yep.
But the folks further down,
Yeah, well,
you know, it's,
That's essentially what we're trying to do, is and the police are usually involved, is getting people to cross there where the light is available.
right, and so, I mean, maybe
We can't
crossing,
fix, we
crossing.
can't fix stupid, but we can give you the opportunity to be safe.
So, yeah, I mean, we are not, as far as I'm concerned, as far as that stuff goes, we're not involved anymore. That's.
I didn't remember that being one of the ones that got shut off. I think it got burned out.
I could check on our
Yeah.
I'm not worried about it, I just, again, it's
Yeah,
courtesy.
So we
can-
hear something from the chief of a formal nature, is that what you're saying?
The chief has already got a hold of Wamiko to get it either turned back on or the light bulb fixed.
Well, if it was taken out, it was taken out. The whole bulb was fixed, the whole.
The whole
They have to
fixture
go
is
through
gone.
us.
Then the
I
fixture would
I
be,
Has to
quickly
go
looked
through
at
the
it, and there's
board.
not a fixture there.
Right,
then they're gonna have to replace it.
then is that I don't think the chief can do that. I think it has to go through
I
the
have no
board.
idea.
Has to what?
I think it's the board has to make that decision and make that authorization. So we'll see what he comes back to us with.
Yeah,
And I'll keep you informed.
Okay.
Okey doke?
He's not that strong a chief.
I'd have to say that in reality, I think I made the decision. If somebody's going to get chastised or whatever, it's my decision on that issue, and I made it. And if the board would like to challenge it on that aspect, I
No, it's a safety issue. I think it was inadvertent, because I don't think.
If it was removed, it was inadvertent. If it's there,
We have to
You
sign
want
this.
these? I don't,
We have to sign this, Mark. Thank you, MA.
Yeah, thank you.
Finance Committee Chair, meet someone who's saving you money.
I think we've known each other a bit of a time. All right,
Yeah, a little bit.
that's it.
I'll
Okay,
talk with you
we
soon.
need to talk.
Yeah, I'll
Can we
talk
do
with you
Dan
soon.
first?
Skip, do you mind if we do Dan first? You can stay here, though. I mean, you don't have to get up.
Did we know what the costs were
Dan,
before
how about coming up?
this?
Oh, yeah, are you signing that, or
Yes.
you vote to sign?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Well, it's over a 3-year payback for just shutting those off.
Right.
Then there's nothing in there about the maintenance of them, and there's also, we have to pay for a police officer at each light post that they're doing it to. So if each one's an hour, we got a $50 fee for a police officer sitting there. So that's another $2,500 on top of that. Just for shutting lights off.
You can use regular time.
I guess we'll have to check into that,
Yeah.
because those are,
I just had some reservations about it, so,
well, it's already a done deal
Yeah.
in the sense it's already there,
okay,
because it was voted to be done.
yeah,
So if that's an issue, we can always revise it and bring it back.
okay.
This is really the whole harmless part, is why they want the signature.
Yeah.
Not so much, you've already signed off on the midnight shut-offs, but
Right, but what Dave is saying is, do we factor into the savings, the cost that it costs us to have the stuff removed? And from my point of view,
they need police, like flagmen, when they're adding on the shut-off piece.
Yeah, and, I'm, just a rough guess, I would say it's gonna take them an hour for each light post.
I have no idea.
I have the little gadget on my desk.
we'll check into it, but again,
Okay.
it was something we didn't.
Well, they pay for it.
Not the flagman, they pay for the,
They pay
They
for
should.
their
They
people.
should they pay special detail?
oh,
They should
Extra
pay our
con-
police.
Extra costs, such as traffic control, are not included in the service cost. That means we
Not
pay
in
for
the-
them.
Well,
it's our
not
service.
included in.
We'll pay Western Mass for them, and then they'll reimburse the
Exactly,
town. But it's
exactly.
just,
Right.
it's still
He may have just taken
another
it.
$2,500, $3,000 that's gonna be added to this. So,
I
Okay.
have no idea what police detail costs. Sorry, that's out of my realm.
yeah,
We'll,
We could get it, so,
Ride just left. Your ride just left.
No, it's not my ride, we came separately. I just told them I was leaving. So, anything more on that? Okay.
thank you very much, appreciate it.
I bet John could get it, so we could work it in regular.
Yeah.
I
It's
don't
a valid
think-
point we need to worry about.
Dan, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
This has gone around a couple times. I just wanted to be available for questions, that's all. So,
After the meeting broke up, I had a question that maybe you can answer. I'm not sure there is a good answer or a bad answer for it, but when DP made their presentation and wanted X number of wells put in place, and they wanted to guard the wellhead and stuff like that, and we talked about falling back and actually looking for the plume. If the plume isn't there, why are we putting the other wells in too? Why can't we find the plume first and then worry about what we're guarding or not guarding until after that? If it was all the same well, if it was all the same machine, I could say, okay, mobilization's a big issue, but I got the impression when we put this 100-footer in, you're gonna bring in a rig.
well, we talked to the driller, we can use the same rig we're gonna use.
That's
so
fine
thank
then. I don't
goodness.
have a problem.
Yeah.
I don't mind, because.
I don't want to remobilize. We actually don't want to go to 100 feet, I'll be honest with you, because we don't want to, there could be another layer to penetrate, and we don't want to. the clay eventually does, you start getting into differing clays. And so
We're going to monitor that as we're drilling?
Yes,
Or is it
yes.
just going to be?
Yeah, well, I
And
just
mean,
know that, like, our geologists and hydrogeologists were like 100. They were okay with like 80. There's just something we need to worry about, but that's a triplet there. So there's a shallow well,
Yes, I know.
a medium well, they were calling them, and then deep, and deep, that's definitely deep. Again, DEP's concerned at somehow that it's going down and up.
Right.
So, I think generally we disagree then based on available information. We actually think it pinches off, the clay pinches off, and would not go deep, but go out. And that has to be proven, that's kind of what they're saying.
Right.
Prove it. So,
Yeah, well-
and then there's only probably, Mark, I think, there's two wells that are kind of like, when you kind of think about like, why are we doing those two? And for all that discussion, if we only end up with two that aren't focused on the plume, but rather giving us a gauge towards Melnick or Stillwater well, I
Yeah,
think that's reasonable.
But if we don't find it anywhere in that plume sector,
Mhm.
and they've already got 3 wells in there,
At the heart of it, you're
at the
referring to.
heart of it right now, and they've got several around the heart,
Mhm.
and we're not seeing anything there.
Mhm.
So if we're doing a look at a cross-section of this thing, and we prove it's not at 80 or 60 or whatever you guys figure with your geologists and
Yeah.
whatnot,
Mhm.
and it's not at 30, it's not at 10. And the other wells that are around there are guardian wells anyways.
Well,
What are we going to find going out further beyond that, looking for
Well,
something?
we did tuck that in. I mean, what they ended up doing is if the landfill was here and then, the plume's going towards you, that deep well is right here, the triplet. And then they put, which is typical, I'll call them perimeter plume wells, to say, okay, so what you're hoping to get is traces or nothing, and you can then model the plume based on that scenario. I mean, what we did take away is wells that were out further.
Right.
So.
And that's what,
We took them away, I mean, in the end, so we took a well away, but they added more drilling length, so, to the wells, so essentially the drilling costs are the same. I mean, you subtracted a well, but you added 100-footer. So, our drilling costs are identical, because we're gonna be out there doing the same amount of footage, if that makes any sense, so.
absolutely.
So I actually think what the negotiation was is what you wanted. I don't think we'll ever get them to agree not to put those, I'll call them perimeter plume wells in. So,
Well,
at this stage, you can obviously do whatever the town needs to do, but I just think it definitely fits more where you were trying to go in the meeting. And hopefully, there's nothing else to do, and we can just monitor this little, and hopefully these other wells on the outside have nothing going on.
Right. Well, can we back off of those? As soon as can we go from monitoring them on a regular basis to intermittent?
Oh, I think if we come back with the plumes here and the perimeter wells of the plume have nothing in them, then you'll just be doing annual monitoring. And we can figure out how many, and the total number of wells will get reduced to that simple perimeter, instead of going out, like they have us doing a sampling on test well 3, which is out near Stillwater, but it's only the analysis. I mean, in terms of like having to drill a well and all that, that's assuming that Brian can tell me where it is. That's what, I don't know really where it is, I just know it's over there somewhere. I just wanted to include it. So I think they kind of, kicked back at us, but that was added in the last revision, so. There's still this balance with them, I think, between their groundwater division and the landfill
Yes.
division. And the benefit, I think, for the town is we really wanted to stay in the landfill division from a compliance standpoint. So I think if they're willing to continue to work, instead of bringing more people to the table from DEP, if you know what I mean.
No, I got a clue.
We'll just bring other bring other groups with us, and you have the groundwater division. They're good people, but,
Yeah, but they're good when they're performing something that's functional.
I meant on a personal level, not necessarily professional decisions.
No, and again, I don't know them, so I can't judge them on the personal level. I'm just saying that basically it's good when we really need them, but when they just want to be there, the party is not never ending. It's one of those where we really need to focus in on what is important.
Mhm. Well, this round will get you there, an analysis, and then it'll give you that. And the hope I have is, much like you, that for this round, we'll have some determination about Melnick's well, because that's a big financial implication to the town. and, where the plume is tracking. And then it'll tell you, I think we're pretty much convinced that still water, it's moving not towards it, but away. And so that becomes, we can all breathe and go, great, now we're just going to track a plume like we always were. Maybe you got to monitor well next well more regularly, and then we can work on what else may have caused that, if you so choose to, or you can just let it go.
Well, yeah, until somebody can give us some way of actually doing that, because right now it's playing darts.
Well, the concentration is so low, there's no way to trace it.
Right.
Like you could run it, really might ready to trace, all this environmental work, and you could run a tracer study, but the concentration is way too low to even consider it, and it does have many other sources, so that's even harder. And some things, I guess.
I do want to really thank you so much for working on the STRAP grant.
Congratulations, that's awesome.
Yeah, but all your freebie for us efforts to put the grant together
Yeah, well,
really paid off, and I just want to thank you, Dan.
Yeah,
It's
you're welcome.
very, very nice of you to make that happen for us.
Almost $1 million.
Almost $1 million, yeah,
Fix River Road.
952,000.
Well, I just want to thank you, because it was your engineering work that you donated to make that happen.
We did
So-
get paid too.
Well, after we get the grant.
Yeah,
but
I mean, that's
You
gonna fix
fronted,
that
you
drainage
fronted
issue.
it, you
Yeah.
fronted it,
Yeah, so-
and because we got the grant, yes, you're getting paid, but you fronted it on spec, and I appreciate that spec, because we did end up getting almost $1 million.
Yeah, it's,
fix
actually, I
that
think
road.
this area did really well, which is unusual. I mean, Conway got the park funded. We helped them. And then Savoy, which they're a big hurricane disaster, got some money. We're helping them as well. So.
Are you going to have to work with the Silver Jackets of the Army Corps for replacing? So you're going to be able to do the drainage repair without having
We
to,
already have all the permits.
Army Corps gave you one already?
Need one.
They didn't?
Yeah, we were able to work around that issue.
Oh, okay. I'll talk to you afterwards. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah. Well, we didn't exceed the threshold. So.
Oh, okay.
I mean, we went through National Heritage, got their blessing, the endangered species. We got local conservation commission's blessing as well as the DEP. So we have the associated permits, and they're not onerous.
All the turtles came down here, right?
Yeah, they're not turtles there.
Whatever it
Spotted
was.
lizards.
We ended up
Remember,
down
I mean,
here.
you're repairing a major drainage problem along the bank on one area, and then you're taking out the debris in the other area. I mean, I don't know who's going to really argue with that.
Right.
I mean, that's a real hard argument. We're going to fix the road and fix this, and then we're going to do this. It's not like you're trying to do something new. I mean, this is, I'd say, environmental issues that have been longstanding. So I think that's the way we presented it. And that's why I think it went through relatively easy in terms of permitting.
Well, thank you, because you were very effective, because I had met with someone last week, and they were surprised that we were able to get that grant without having to, have Army Corps more involved.
We don't have, believe it or not, because of, again, River Road, the road, and then you have a two-tier embankment.
Right.
So bank full width of the Connecticut River is actually down at the base. So we impacted so little wetland very carefully. We did some things really carefully, so we would have to stay away from certain permits.
Wow.
So trust me, if we needed an Army Corps permit, I mean, I could
No,
talk to Paul
I'm
Snaringer.
so impressed.
Yeah,
I'm
Paul Snaringer, but
impressed.
also DEP would have said, you need a 401, you need this, you need this. I mean, I think our wetland impact is a couple hundred square feet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you get 5,000 is your threshold.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, that's really good. Thank you, Dan.
Yeah.
You did a very good job.
you're welcome. I'm just excited, I can fix a problem that's been going on since HAP was around for 10 years before that.
I know.
So we'll be able to start working on that.
It's been a problem since we brought you on board
Yeah.
in 2003 or 2002.
And longer than that.
Yeah,
So,
it's been a long time. So thank you.
To go back a little bit, who's going to take the lead on making sure that Melnick is notified that he is using it as well and that it is getting tested?
Well, as soon as the well runs through 2 consecutive clean water testing,
Which it has.
we haven't gotten the second.
yeah, so,
Yeah, the second one came through.
Yeah.
yeah, Dick actually, I think, is coordinating the testing on behalf of Sean. So if someone can follow up with him tomorrow.
Dick is going to do the testing portion of it.
Right.
Sean's going to do the interrelationship of when they start taking water from there and mixing it with the
But, I mean,
process.
there's no reason Dick would proper coordination couldn't directly correspond with DEP on the issue. It would be a decent role for him, as he's responsible for that town-wide.
Right.
From a health standpoint.
Well, no, I think that Dave's question is more towards getting their well, who's telling Melnick to actually start?
Oh, I thought
using the
you
well
were
on-
referring to coordination with DEP.
No.
Well, my understanding from
Still
the
do it with Dick,
DEP
actually.
was that
Yeah, Dick would do that.
we gave them the test results with our last meeting here. And they said the next day they were going to, as long as
I can follow up
the
with that
numbers
if you
were
want.
correct, they were going to give the release.
Yeah.
My understanding right now was that they never gave the release.
Yeah.
So that means the town has put out another $4,000 for water up there, which is not what we should be doing.
Yeah. I honestly thought they were going to directly coordinate with you guys when we left that meeting. But I can send Larry and Dan a note saying, in copy,
Can we check to make sure it's not in our email?
Yeah, I haven't seen anything.
well,
And
Sean's been out
Dick-
too, so I don't know if he's checking his email.
Dick
or not.
tells me everything every day, all day, so he didn't mention this to me, so I
So, I
will
mean, I
ask
can,
tomorrow.
yeah, you want to just check
And
on
if
it?
he's
let me know.
listening, let me know.
You
Okay,
just want to let me know if you need me to do anything, like call Dan Hall or anything?
okay.
Because you were supposed to get a letter saying,
Within a couple of days. via
saying
email.
something.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure what they were going to write, but they were going to say
They're
something.
going to revise the letter.
Yeah, I thought we,
Well, they revised the approval of the work plan, but they didn't address.
yeah,
the
whatever,
no.
I do have a letter, which was in your packet, but I don't, it's.
the letter?
Doesn't
well,
say
it's-
anything about water.
No, it
though.
has to do with,
With the
what came
work
out of
plan.
our meeting.
Right, but both of those things were addressed. I
Yeah,
was expecting a
it's in
separate
here.
letter,
Yeah, no.
and I apologize. I thought that they were going to directly, send you guys something, because it really doesn't, we'll
That
want
was
the
my
data
understanding,
eventually.
too.
So,
That was my understanding.
Yeah, I was under the impression after the last meeting was that we were going to basically give them the okay, and then once they started pumping it again, just to verify that,
in doubt it stays below detection limit.
state,
Right. I mean,
When you can check emails, and then let me know if you need me to do anything. Just email me, probably, or call my mobile, because,
obviously if the well's contaminated, we don't want them to use it, but
but if it's not.
if it's not,
Have you heard that it isn't? I have not heard that. It has been tested both
No.
times. I didn't know it would
Well,
have
you've
been
tested it
completed by now.
multiple times at this point.
this should
the
be the
second test was done just before the last
Yeah,
meeting.
The second, and there should be a third test that's done. So we should have 3 sets. And my instructions, or what I thought was going to happen, was after we got those done, then we were going to crank their well up to 50% of capacity and test again within a
Right.
week or
Bec- so
2
you
weeks.
could-
So
because
we
of
could
the-
make sure that it wasn't just sitting dormant because they
That
weren't
is-
pumping
that is a
it.
concern, yeah.
So that basically, while it was sucking it in, it wasn't
Yeah.
them bringing it on, and test their well while they're cutting back on our
I mean, you,
And that was was that the 30-day after pumping test?
yeah, that's.
Yeah,
okay.
because
That's
they
what
were
I
going to
thought,
pump
so
it.
I didn't think it
and then
was
they were
going to
gonna-
be done yet.
Yeah, no, they had to pump it. We were going to test it after they were pumping for like 30
Right, so
days.
we haven't reached
So
that.
we could make sure that they weren't pumping up something.
But Dan Hall did say, if you have data from Melnick's well that says it's not contaminated, there's
Which
no
we do.
reason.
Right.
But he was definitely a little dodgy on the issue, because I don't think he wanted to say, so we may have to pull that letter out of him, that may be what's going on. And not in a bad way, just, he may not want to approve it, if you can understand his
I know.
point of view. So that may be just something that,
Well, again, I think we're taking a very conservative stance.
yeah,
on
I
it.
just think he's, I don't know.
Okay.
Do you want to make a motion that we approve the
Here's the contract.
Weston and Sampson contract?
It's two contracts, two places,
Okay.
just on the same contract.
You made a motion, David, do I have
I'll second it.
any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Make that unanimous, please.
I'm sorry, I have to borrow your pen.
Council review it again.
No, I think that's the
They have
same
to sign
terms.
it.
Yeah, you have to get your council to sign. And so I'll get back to you on dates on when we're going to start, because there are some dates in the DEP letter that are important.
First,
Right.
deadline.
So I think we're first week of January, so we just need to talk about,
I fixed
It
my
sound
road.
like-
oh, you did?
I fixed it.
Okay, thank you.
The only problem we have right now is
January
depending on the size of it, of what you're bringing in.
We're being a track rig in,
So it shouldn't be an issue.
no, it shouldn't.
My biggest concern was the water district has a couple of real swampy areas before you get to my property.
Are they like how swampy? Like,
It's not going to be swampy now.
okay, it's
frozen.
Zero, yeah, you're going
Well,
to come
after
over
this weekend, though, it might
It's
be.
gonna rain again.
Yeah, but, so,
Okay.
I wanted I wanted Sean and Brian to get together and see if they could just make it a little bit more passable on
Yeah.
their property. Mine, I actually got someone in there, because I had 2 huge blocks in the way.
Right,
and
yeah.
You
Okay.
you'd probably cut a track trying to get over it.
Yeah, I mean, those tractors, like, run a little tank around, so,
Yeah.
okay.
18-inch solid blocks are probably not friendly to it.
No. So we'll get you a schedule as soon as we get all this sorted out. I know we got a driller lined up for after the holidays. Hopefully
Thank
it'll
you,
be
Dan.
Nice enough to be, we'll be outside.
I'd
one
like
way
to
or
know
another.
when they're on
Yeah,
the property.
well, and then when we're drilling, if you want to come and stand there and watch the drilling with one of our
Yeah, and
guys.
get cold feet, yeah. I'd
Get
love
freezing
to-
cold.
I'd love
gonna
to
be-
do that.
They were drawing straws in the office. I'm not sure if.
Short straws.
I'm not sure it was the winner. You need anything else? No?
It's nice that you did come by.
Yeah, I just
It's
wanted
helpful,
to be,
thank you.
yeah, I just remembered it. I'm like, oh, I'm close enough. I'll swing by and answer questions, so.
Thank you very much.
Well, and,
Pittsfield? Pittsfield.
yeah, well, close by for me is a relative term, so.
Are you gonna be in Holly on Friday for that meeting, mitigation meeting?
Friday, no.
Okay,
There's a meeting on, for the whole Holly project.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
I've never worked in Holly.
Oh, well, there's new mitigation money that we're trying to get as pilot.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know if Debbie Schreiber had called you on that.
No, I didn't know about the meeting, actually.
I think they're changing the
We
sons.
need to move
yeah.
us along.
Yeah. So,
know.
Thank you very
call
much.
me or something.
Yeah,
can
we
look at it.
will.
Thank you. Have a nice evening.
Thank you, Dan.
All right. Skip?
I'll see if I can be short. Budget processing is underway or started, and we need, or the town needs your help, put it that way. The town has a problem that you're well aware of, in that, at least for the last couple of years, we've tended to
Closer to the mic.
increase, the town has tended to increase expenditures faster than we've been increasing revenues. So we need to put a little bit of a clamp someplace on that. And I don't know if you read in the paper, Greenfield is looking at something called zero-based budgeting. It sounds nice, but it's not really that difficult, but it's not something that you do without at least, a little bit of planning in advance and maybe some training. And we're not there. But that doesn't mean that we can't do some things. Specifically, consumer price index is not increasing very fast, less than 2%. In other words, the cost of inflation is 2% or less. And there's no reason that somewhere along the way we can't ask departments to hold their budget to something in that range. And that's what we're asking, is a directive that goes out from the Board of Selectmen saying to department heads or those that are producing budgets that they need to keep their budget within whether it's 2% or 2.5% increase over last year's. And also we need something in there that says if you can't do that, that the department heads need to come to the selectmen and review the requests with them. And then the selectmen can make a decision to override that request and say, no, you need to come in at 2.5%, or okay, you can request that. And that needs to be done. We'd like to have that done before the Finance Committee sees it. So I don't know what your thoughts are.
Have you
questions?
spoken to the schools? Because I heard the elementary school was about 6.
Yeah, I sent an email. Marty Barrett called me, and
there's-
I sent you all an
The
email.
elementary school's 6.2% increase this year.
Have you had a discussion with Marty yet about that?
I did have a discussion with Marty, but obviously it
Didn't pan out.
not at least 2.5% didn't. So I haven't seen the budget. I don't know. This is the first.
Yeah, she just called me and told me this verbally, and I immediately wrote the email and sent it to
Okay.
finance and to the select board.
So what are we supposed to do on that, Skip? I mean, do you have a
I
game plan on
I would
that?
like, be more than willing to sit down with Wendy, and we can address exactly how we do that. Basically, I want a piece of paper, a letter, if you want to call it that, or some directive that comes
Oh,
from you.
no, I meant about the schools.
Oh, I don't know.
I mean,
What can we ever do about it?
Let me backtrack just a little bit. It has been a standing protocol of the Board of Selectmen that they live within Proposition 2.5.
right. That's always been our sort of our understanding.
That's our understanding. And anything that does not has to be explained in the narrative. It has to be brought to the Board of Selectmen. Now, we've got some sort of misunderstanding going on where we don't know who's on first and who's supposed to see what first or whatever in that aspect of it. I do not mind being the first out. I don't mind having us review that in the process. Please let me finish.
Yeah.
But the reality of it is, if you want a letter, I have no problem with us going back to every department head and making sure that they understand that the expectation is that we live within Proposition 2.5, not giving them license to live within Proposition 2.5, because the budget for the municipal side is a team effort, and at some point in time, some's going to have to be given and some's going to have to take, and projects are going to have to be done on their merits. So I have no problem with our office putting out a memo that asks us to achieve a 2%. That is not, and if we've lost control of that or we've gotten away from it in a formal manner, then it's time for us to bring that back as a thought process.
That's what you've done with the budget, and they're being prepared.
And the thing is,
we just need a number from you.
We've really how do I put it? We've lost the continuity in how we're going to chase the dollars down to where they need to go to be a reasonable number for the towns. And with the school being 6% and the high school having a 9 or 8 or 9% budget, those are things that we will have to deal with. I mean, at the last budget meeting that I went to with the schools, I made a very strong plea to have them to have their budget comply with Proposition 2.5 and be a 2.5 budget, and realizing that the formula is not going to ferret out that way. They can come up with a 2.5% budget, and Conway's going to get a certain chunk of that, we're going to get a certain chunk of that, and somebody's going to be above 2.5%, and that's how the school works. But I think the state Proposition 2.5 law was enacted as a measure to say this is what the goal is, and it's not to hold every single person to that goal. It's to have the towns look at it as a benchmark to say 2.5 is where you should be targeting, and if not, you better have a pretty good reason why, because the Proposition 2.5 are not free and clear. They're not something that you get as, go to the bank and get out of your ATM machine. So if we've lost that, I apologize, but we will put out that letter, and I guess the pleasure of the board is to whether we stay at 2.5 or go down to a target much less, and because we know we're going to go higher in some areas and lower in others, I don't have a problem with that. So whatever your pleasure of the board is.
We've always targeted between 2 and 2.5%. If people could keep it around 2%, it's what we've looked for, and then we adjust based on what is happening in the departments, and if something's happening and one department needs more this year, then we're cutting back substantially in other departments, and there was a trade-off. But in general, we want to see around 2 to 2.5%. But we're only 30% of the pie, Skip. We really have no real impact.
Let's not go there. That conversation happens every single year.
I know, but I mean,
it's not. It's
we
not
can
helpful.
do. I know we can. We'll work on our side.
Whatever the numbers are. I mean, we've typically at least for the past decade, the elementary school has typically been within reason. 6% to me is not within reason.
The thing is, they usually come in with something between 3 and 6%, and then they use school choice to drive it down to reasonable when we see it on the bottom line on our cherry sheet. But they're still spending more and becoming reliant on school choice money to keep that budget.
They became reliant on school choice money
Years ago.
years ago.
But again, it is relying on it.
Yeah,
It is not giving us a 2.5% budget. They are
Well-
they're taking that money and using it for some of those areas of operation costs. It's supposed to be for betterment of the students.
Initially,
And-
because I was on the school committee when we decided that we would go with school choice. And the reason that we went with school choice is that I think we had lost 4 or 5 students from Deerfield someplace else, school choice. And it's like, okay, if everybody else wants to play the game, we'll play the game.
But in the game,
So,
let's make it clear we start talking. In the game, if we did not go to school choice, we do not have to send money to them in school choice.
We could
Both
opt
towns
out.
have to both towns have to be in the system. If one town opts out of it, yes. If one town opts out of it, they don't get school choice money and they don't pay school choice money. So losing our kids to another school, all that did was lose those kids to another school. The amount of money that's paid is not part of the school choice formula.
well, I'll have to check because that was not the way it was initially.
That's the way we voted it at the annual meetings.
Do we, I mean,
We can check.
Yeah, but
The-
again,
the
it
other-
still doesn't matter.
the other
We
thing-
are in this boat now. We're in the stream and we're paddling. So we're there, and having this discussion is nice for informational, but it's not going to, complaining about it's not going to change anything.
No.
We need to make sure that we say that we're going to try to live within the Proposition 2 and ask everybody else to. And if they don't, then we need to make sure that the people that are using those services and paying for those services, which are all the townspeople.
I guess what I'm saying is that from the municipal side, schools are a different situation, particularly Frontier. When the budget comes in, Department XYZ requests a 5% increase. What I would like to see is somewhere along the way, the selectmen sit down and make the determination that, no, that department does need that 5%, or it needs 3%, or no, it needs 2%, and they're going to have to live with 2%, so that the request comes to the Finance Committee at a 2% level, or a 2.5%, or whatever it is. You override the department head and put that in there as the requested amount. And you can do that. They work for you.
Well, I have no problem with it.
So-
The problem I have is that you're asking me to make a judgment on how much they can spend, not knowing what the financial picture is. Without you getting the financial picture and being part of that philosophy and discussion.
Of course, we never know what the true financial picture is until after the start of the fiscal year. So
Again,
we're taking a best guess.
Yeah, we're shooting darts, and what I'm saying is that if we hold a standard, and we choose 2% or whatever it is, and we have narratives that describe both of that, and both your committee and my committee are reviewing it at exactly the same time, when we meet, we have the pros and cons from both sides and both thought processes. And that's what I thought we'd always drive to do, is have the meeting of the minds, that meeting where both your committee and the Board of Selectmen came together. We were all already on the same page. We already had the information, and we made a joint thought as to why we were saying, no, this has to be different.
I guess
if you want me to go,
I look at it slightly differently, but not, and I agree. We do need to look at it, but I would like to, it's kind of like having two eyes look at it. You look at it, and we look at it.
Well, we should have 3 eyes looking at it.
And,
Well, the
well, you have
president
the
first.
department head,
Well,
obviously.
even more than, so department head's looking at it.
Yep.
Administrative assistant's looking at it before it even gets to us.
Yep.
then we're looking at it. You know, now, Wendy has a meeting with all the department heads, municipal department heads tomorrow. There's, you know, as far as I'm concerned, that is the time, instead of writing a letter, that she says right at that meeting that the town is looking at, we want to cap all budgets at 2%, 2.5%, whatever number we want to come up with. That's what the board is saying.
I just wanted the memo from you to put added strength to that.
Yeah.
Take a vote tonight, I can mention at the meeting tomorrow, and then when we send out the budget sheets, that will be in the
That's
cover
the-
letter, the
right.
memo.
Because, you know, as part-time people, it's hard for us and yourself to administer this. We need the full-time person overlooking all this before it even
Sure.
gets there.
But she's not.
The interim
I
full-time
mean,
person.
The interim,
Who's not going to be here for any of the
Yeah.
budget?
that's it. The interim person
The easy part.
can only do so much.
Yes,
And then
I know.
ultimately, you know, if there's a hammer that's needed, you're the guys that have the hammer.
Right.
That's really what it boils down to.
I don't think that's.
And I don't mean that in a pejorative sense. I just mean that, you know, that the pressure has to come from you.
Right, and we have no problem with that. And the reality is, I'm not going to use, I personally, as one member of the Board of Selectmen, would not use a cap to describe what we're doing. We have a target that we want to hit. And if you can't hit that target, you better be able to explain it to us in a manner in which we can justify what we're going to spend money on. One year, the second or third year I was here, we made a cap, 0 spending. The cost of that 0 spending cap was astronomical, because basically people didn't do maintenance on stuff. They didn't do stuff that needed to be done. They scrimped and they went out and stopped in, and they did everything possible to live to that rule. And we were just saying, you know, we don't have any money this year. It looks really slim because we lost some of the revenue streams and stuff, and go do your best job. Well, they took it to the point where they didn't buy pencils, they didn't do things, that just to keep the departments running. And we paid the backlash for 2 to 3 years.
And that's why I think I'm saying that, you know, that the inflation rate, really in a lot of ways, is what we're looking at. We're saying, unless there's some sort of initiative coming from a department that they have to do something,
Right.
then they ought to be able to live within that inflation rate, basically. And if they can't, then bring it to you, bring it to Wendy. Wendy can bring it to you, and then before it even gets to the Finance Committee.
One thing that I'm going to ask for this year that we haven't in the past is that we do have these one-time events
Sure.
that occur. The problem I'm having is we don't keep track of the fact that that one-time event shouldn't spike their budget forever. If it's an equalizer, or it's something that occurs, but because you bought 16 widgets this year, you know, 30 computers or whatever the process is, next year those 30 computers are not part of that line item budget anymore. You don't get to add your 2% on top of that. It should be deducted out of the process, and your budget should be based upon, as you said, a 0 base. Ours is modified 0, is your budget is an operating budget, capital and those one-time come out of that. You don't get to spend that again the following year. And we haven't had a good way of tracking that. I think Bernie did it to a certain degree, but we just don't know how that really transpired. And I want to make sure that in the conversation that Wendy has, that is explained, that because you got something above and beyond, it doesn't mean that resets your budget limit. It may, and that may be okay. We may have put something on the budget like an extra person.
Sure.
Or we may have changed our strategy on how we change out police cars, or we may have done something, and that's there forever. But certain things.
Police cars is a good example. I mean, police cars were costing us $30,000, now they're costing us $40,000.
Right. So it's time to reevaluate.
And you know, that's, so obviously the capital improvement side needs to reflect that.
But in the same token, we took a formula that was based upon $30,000 exchange rate and found that it was very cost-effective to change it at a certain interval.
at $40,000, that interval may not be still a valid formula.
Could very well be, and I do agree, and that's something that the
But we got to
capital
look
improvement
at
committee should look at.
We need to look at it. But the reality is, I'm not looking to sit here and try to pass judgment on things we don't know the details on. And in the past, we've got extremely good narratives from our departments that explain exactly why they're doing and what they're doing. This past year, we've had a little bit of problems with promotions and salary increases and stuff of that nature. We're hopefully going to get that under handle also. So, again, I guess we're back to, do we have a motion on there to cap it at to have a recommended target, or what's the pleasure of the board?
Well, I think we should just ask Wendy to formalize our standing request that the budget stay between 2% and 2.5%.
Well, I think
I mean-
the finance committee is asking us to pick a target and
You know,
work around the target.
And I don't have a problem saying that, we should go to the department heads and say we'd like to see the increase no more than 2%. Anything over 2%, we want as you suggest, a strong documentation of why they have to do this and justify it.
Well, our narratives have been that
That's
way.
why we
and
instituted
I know
narratives.
it has been, but, I don't think it's always been followed.
And it may not have been, but again, I would like to make sure that we understand that the narrative, if we haven't critiqued them correctly, then we as managers have not done what we really should be doing. I would just like to say a target will be, and right now I'm getting the sense of 2% is your target. Please try to comply. If you can't, then I expect to read it in the narrative. If I'm not seeing it in the narrative, then I'm going to push it back to them and have them chase it. So rather than getting it off on a negative thought, I'd rather say, hey, this is what we're looking for the town. And
Maybe Wendy should send something to Marty formally as well.
Because,
just after we make this decision, it needs to go to everybody. It needs to go to schools and say, Lynn, this is what we've done. And I hope that you guys agree with the position we took at the school, is we know that the formula is going to change whatever the number is. But if we ask them to hit the same target everybody else is hitting, we may get a few % off, and we should be upfront and say, listen, we get a 5% this year because that's where the formula put us, but the school came in at its 2% or 2.5% target that it went.
Did you hear anything about Frontiers?
No, she doesn't have that yet, or
Okay.
didn't when she called.
But again, it's those things that if they come back to us and say we need to do X, Y, and Z, fine. We're putting a lot more money into the schools in capital because we do roofing and we do other things that are there that aren't part of that budget thought process. So, trying to put how much it costs us in real time is, we can be all over the table. I would like to say our operating budget should try to be at what percent.
That's fine.
And
that's
here at 2%,
what we're
I
asking
agree
for.
with that.
And understanding that there may be extenuating circumstances that may need to be considered.
Right.
Because, it's like an article in the paper today, Franklin Tech, they're going to need a new roof.
Yeah.
They got about less than 10% in their capital reserve for what it's going to cost to do that repair. Where's the money going to come from? Frontier, if they came in at 5%, I'd probably be happy on the first shot. I mean, then just what, I'm not
Let's
saying that
let's let go there.
So
No, but, I
have
mean, it's-
you settled on a number?
I mean, when you look at it, Dave,
2%?
2%.
That's what we
Not even
suggest.
2.5?
Anything over 2% to
Would
make
you-
sure they give us documentation
you won't
and
consider
justification.
2.5%?
Huh?
No,
No.
2.5. Hey,
I think when you do the narrative, and then you have to explain why there's more than 2%, then they'll,
okay.
the narrative
The
gives them their
narratives
arg-
the narratives have been very good to describe where they're going and what their dreams are.
Right.
And we have the right to change the dreams
Mm-hmm.
and put them back for a year or whatever it is and what their necessities are. The target of the 2% is just saying, hey, times are going to get a little tougher. 2.5% is what we have to comply with no matter what. But we have to acknowledge the fact that we spent some money for the EMS project.
Excuse me.
most of it's gonna come back to us this year, but it's not gonna come back to us in the future years. So in preparations of doing this thing, we need to ask people to look at the soul search and come back and do it. And again, one person saying that I'm not gonna hold somebody's feet to the fire for 2%. I'm gonna look at their narratives and ask them to be.
Can I ask a
Correct, Jim.
question? Because I haven't been informed as how this process works in terms of cost of living increases. How does that work here? Does that something you do normally? Does the personnel board make that recommendation? What's the
You
procedure
don't
here?
have cost of living increase.
The
The police does, but
police
It's
don't
not
have a cost
something-
of living.
they don't have one?
No, they have they get
They
a
have a
step.
union contract.
Oh, they
They
do
get a
step.
step, and they get,
You-
they get,
So you don't do cost of living, you
No,
just have steps?
it's not steps.
Yeah.
It's merit raises, and for the most part, it's come pretty close to a lot of people getting steps with merits as proven. But the formula we have to allow them to increase in monetary benefits from the towns is structured such that the cost of living and performance is tied together. So everybody's not going to get the same raise.
So the compensation scale, the steps aren't yearly steps? They're
No.
only granted on a successful,
Meeting of their goals. And they can,
If they
depending on the
perform
department
more.
head, can get more, or
And-
they can
and
get less.
has the personnel, that's just between the department head and their staff? It's not something that the
The-
personnel board has involvement with, or,
It-
Only for promotions.
Well, it's only,
no, just this process I'm
And
talking about.
the Personnel Committee has some question about what we're doing, but the Personnel Committee has not said anything about, they just need more information at this point in time, more of a discussion. Not sure that we fully understand, and I think
That's what
sort
I'm
of your
asking.
question.
It's
We're
done
the
on
same point.
evaluations. If you have performed your duties, just you show up to work and
You meet your
your goals.
expectations, right, meets expectations.
there isn't anything. But then if you, because you have to move, you move up the
Right.
scale by performing more on the, you do
Okay.
your performance.
That's
You
different.
perform.
Okay.
Yeah, if you read the plan that was put out by Jacobs,
Mhm.
it's made to be reevaluated on a 7-year process.
Right, that's the overall,
The overall big
the
picture.
overall,
But
everything.
we took merit and cost of living and put
Right.
it in the same pot of money.
Okay,
So someone's going to get a baseline, not a cost of living, but they're going to get, if they just meet the minimum, they'll get a certain amount of raise.
they will.
They
That-
will get some
that-
raise. They do not stay stagnant at one point in time. They'll get, but that's up to the
Traditionally,
department
that's
head.
what the step is. You go, every year you're here, you move up a step unless you don't meet your
This is not a
basic.
step.
It's not a step.
No.
And the
So
reason
you're-
for it is, after 10 years, everybody's at
Topped
the end of the
out.
step. They're all topped out.
I think it's a,
The problem we have is that
Right.
town administrators don't understand it. And Mr. Jacobs didn't explain it to anybody that
Well, I-
made it actually
And
work.
department heads don't understand it, so.
Well, it's kind of hard when you have 3 different opinions as to what it means. So that's something that the personnel and the Board of Selectmen will have to get in a
well,
formal statement of
I'm
how it
asking
works.
this now in the context of the, because that's where your costs are, in terms of the 30% of the total budget being in local general government. is
80-20 rule, which is
salaries.
80% of your costs are salary and benefits, and
Salaries.
20% is everything else.
So that's why I wanted to understand. I
So
need to
what-
understand that.
What you would do is you take everyone's salary and you have a 2% pool, and how that 2% pool is allocated to how people perform. And that's how you have performance-based evaluations. So, I mean, if we're saying 2%, then you have the 2%.
So what are the
And it-
steps for?
There aren't steps.
Well,
Well, but there are,
steps. There are
there's the
steps.
grades,
There
there's
are-
the
There are
10
grades.
steps.
Grades.
There are levels.
Grades and
There are
steps.
steps within
The-
grades.
The steps traditionally are year to year to year, unless for some reason you don't get it, but that's what I'm asking.
Can you do us a favor?
Yeah.
It's
Try to-
not here. Stop saying it,
Okay.
because it is not here. The only place it is, and that is at the police, and the police have agreed that the steps will be
0 this year.
this year. And they pick what they want to do in it, that they get no balance above that baseline. What we did was we put a pool of money in and said, we're going to pick a number, and this is what it is, and it's cost of living and merit. And some people get a little bit more, some a little less. The thing is, if I give you a $1 an hour raise, and it doesn't get you to the next step, you don't go to the next step. You're still in the first step, but you get a raise. If I get you $2, as an example, and it's not based on $2, but if you get a $2 raise and it takes you to the next step, that's fine. If you do everything perfect, and you shine, and you teach people how to do stuff, and you save 6 little kiddies on a third stay, you could go up 2 steps, if that's what the department head felt you did. But he's only got so much money in that pool to promote his people, to move forward. Above and beyond is money that would get if you actually promoted them to another level, another grade.
So they do follow the steps.
They stay within those increments. We only put it in 10 increments to allow people to understand how it shifted. And the way it was designed was...
For example, if you started at, say, $20 an hour and step 1, step 2 was 21, step 2 is 22, and so forth.
It's basically 80 cents from
So
step.
either it goes,
on that
either you
scale.
go up or you don't go up.
Right.
You go from 20 to 21 or you don't go.
Right.
Or maybe 20 to 22 in a rare case, but,
Right.
okay.
And the thing about it is, it was designed so that, in reality, the people who came in at the beginning would have an easier step by design to get to 5, to mid-grade. And after mid-grade, it was harder to hit the marks of that professionalism of evaluation.
To increase your
To get increased. So it got people up into a mid-range, and then from there, you would have to do more. And what we were trying to do is, when people got to that mid-range, they thought about, do I want to stay in this career field? Do I want to be in the police department a sergeant? So I move back down and make grade a little bit easier and move through the process that way? Or how do I work this process? We're trying to get people to want to be proactive at moving through and finding work that's...
We're rewarding efficiency and performance.
No, I don't have a problem. I just that
It's
I'm
not
not sure
automatic.
that
It's not well explained,
the
because...
personnel committee does not understand the process. And last year, when we talked about it, we didn't get it. We
Maybe we
didn't
should
get
have
an
Mr.
explanation
Jacobs
that
come
we
back
understood.
then or something.
We need to get it. We've tried 3 times,
Read the book.
we've tried 2 times to get this thing right. And in both times we failed dismally.
Yeah.
And this is going on our second real good failure. Because the reality is, we want a merit-based system that allows the people to progress through the ranks. I'm not going to call them steps, but ranks, and become better with better education and better thought process. Every time we did that, somebody labeled it as a step, and
Everybody got one.
everybody got one. And when we caught on to everybody getting one, it was like, wait a minute, this isn't the way it's designed, because sooner or later we're going to get to 10, if you got employees here, and nobody's going to get any more steps. So we made this system, and what was supposed to happen after 7 years is we looked at the market. You know, we have a guy that digs a hole or carries a gun or does whatever, and we look around and say, this is how much it's worth to the town of Deerfield to have this employee do this job for us. And we put calibrators on it so that basically
So we
if
revised the salary schedule.
so that the schedule was, you know, if we fell short,
It
we
stayed
made it
current.
bigger.
It stayed current.
If we stayed ahead, like right now we're just a tad ahead of the curve, we could adjust, or we could say, hey, we're doing well. We haven't had issues that other towns have had. We're doing good. Let's not mess with something that works, and put another, recalibrate people back into the scales so that they had place for the next 7 years to go. We didn't expect anybody to go from a step at the very beginning to 10 in that 7-year period, because it was 10 increments of thought.
It was to reward stable employees, but it was also to reward people that wanted to continue to perform and be, outstanding. Because, we have to deliver services more efficiently and more for less money. So we're trying to, and your salaries, like you said, are a large percentage of our budget. So the idea is to generate, the service for less money and encourage people to do that.
One of the things that I might suggest, I throw this out as a suggestion. You might say to the department heads that evaluations, if you already have it, and you may already have, that evaluations need to be done before you will get any raise, no matter what.
I agree, and that's a Jayism. I know where that's coming from.
No, that's not.
But I think that the town of Deerfield needs to give the department heads the understanding of what they're dealing with before we hit them with a hammer for not complying with something we can't articulate at this meeting with someone who's supposed to already understand it. We need to sit down with them and go through and have them understand and calibrate it to the point where they know what their expectations are before we tell them we're not going to pay them for doing something we haven't told them how to do it correctly.
Well, we supposedly did this 3 years ago, but whatever it is.
We've done it, we did it 10 years ago, 8 years ago, 5 years ago, 3 years ago, and we've been trying to get it for the last 2 years.
But I think
move
the
forward,
guidelines that Wendy's going to give tomorrow at the meeting are that we have a 2% pool.
Target.
Mm-hmm.
And so you need to work within that, and that's what we'll reflect. A general statement is much better than being negative. We can sit down with the department
I
heads.
appreciate that, but there is some point in time when you have to, cut, or whatever it is, fish or cut bait, and
Our
you need
department
to tell
heads,
department heads that they need to do evaluations. that is.
they are.
They are going to, they have done them. We just haven't evaluated whether they've,
Whether they've done them right.
if they've met a standard. We don't have a standard. We don't have somebody to do that process that looks at it and says, yeah, we hit the mark. This is what we're doing. We need to be doing a calibration of the people.
I'm done. I'm not throwing any more comments at it.
Okay.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Appreciate your
Thank
time.
you.
Thank you, Skip. I'm sure it will be an interesting budget year.
Did you vote on that,
Yeah.
the 2%? Okay.
Well, we can formally vote.
That's the sense of the
All
board right now.
I make a
If-
motion that we give Wendy the guideline of around 2%.
Second it.
Any further discussion? As long as it's as a target. It's not a dick.
That's
It's
what I
not
said,
an edict.
around
How- We
2%.
use the
No,
basic
target.
letter that's used in the past. So we expect to be able to get them out in a couple weeks. Next week's just,
No.
And there's some formula stuff we're trying to figure out on the computer. Casey's trying to figure out on the computer. But we've got all the, and I'm going to tell them that tomorrow.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
all right.
I'm going to be a fly on that meeting. All right. I guess so much for the comments.
And I
Public
forwarded to
comments
you-
are good.
I forwarded to you the email from Tom Clark, who couldn't be here, but we did send out the capital requests already for people to return those, so.
Very good.
They're quite low, is my understanding, which is good.
Yeah, I've asked, just for, I think it'd be worthwhile to do, I've asked Kevin to come up with the facilities list, not for next year necessarily, but just to get a real handle on what the capital facilities needs are. And also Casey and others with some information we have to look at the technology and communications needs, what with the broadband rolling out and stuff like that, how it all fits together. Are there opportunities for resources to come in from outside for that kind of thing? So, at any rate. just
Speaking
letting you know
of
that.
technology and resources, have we got that copier straightened out yet?
In there,
Yes.
that one's fine. It was it was
It
this
just won't
one.
communicate with,
I'm sorry?
my understanding, it won't communicate with that
The
office.
problem was the problem was between the software, the financial software that the treasurer's, collector's office uses, and the computer. I believe it's been worked out, and the copier. They got the bills out, but I haven't heard anything this week, so.
Yeah,
Can you ask?
but they got the bills out with that copier. And
Right,
not
that's,
this one.
no, that wasn't, it's the same copier, same machine. It was theirs, it was their machine in there.
Can you check to see if there's any technical issues between the two copy machines in the facilities? Just ask Casey just to put on an email that
Yeah.
says, are we having any problems with the copy machines?
Yeah, the one I was aware of was what was going on.
And I was aware of that also, but it's, the problem I'm seeing is I walk in here and I hear people saying that they've had a problem for 3 weeks and they don't say something to somebody because they're kicking the machine trying to get it working. And
We had
I
the
think we need-
technician, it was a lot of conversation.
conversation.
And it was, I said to the technician, what's your plan B? And he said, well, I'm going to try this first. And I said, I want you to do plan B also. Be prepared to do that immediately.
Yeah.
So I think it's okay, but I will check into it tomorrow.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, anything from the Board of Health?
No, not at the moment.
Other than
Have a happy holiday.
have a happy holiday. One thing I do want to bring
I
up
did an
is,
inspection with Dick yesterday.
All right.
let's not go there right now. I do want to make sure that I was educated from Sean on the subject of the salts. And I knew it, but I'd forgotten it. And I think it'd be probably a good idea for us to revisit the fact that when temperatures drop below about 10 or 9 degrees, salt is no longer effective. And for people to get out there thinking that they've just salted the roads, it's going to do you any good, it's not. Ice will reform with in salt water, no matter how much salt you put in it at a certain temperature. So New England is not known for having these frigid ice or snowstorms.
During those temperatures.
They're used to having it fall rate at 32 or 30 degrees. So if you're out there and it is below 10 degrees, don't plan on that road not having black ice because they just salted it. It will still be black ice. And there were quite a few accidents to prove that theory true yesterday. So just a heads up to everybody. We had a very good meeting with the Yankee Candle today. They awarded $16,000 in grants to the local school kids for college tuitions, and they put out about $8,000 to the local fire departments for Deerfield will be using theirs for communications, and I think Whately is using theirs for pumps to support their brush trucks. But it was a very festive time. Very nice to have the elementary school course out, and it was a good event. So I want to say thank you again to Yankee Candle for being a corporate partner with the town. It's proved again to be a very valuable asset to us. Anything else for Selectmen's comments?
I just want to say thank you to the Highway Department for working with the Women's Club and I guess different businesses to put the lights up at the Common. It's really nice.
Yeah, one thing on a side note, all the Grinches in the world, when people are doing something nice for you, it's probably a whole lot better to keep your mouth shut. These guys worked very hard, and for people to call up and criticize the works as it was going on, work in progress, I believe was in poor taste, and it created more.
Well, people, I have to
disharmony
say,
and-
I've had nothing but positive phone calls.
And I got a couple negative ones, and I think that the reality of it is these guys do a wonderful job. They didn't get to finish it in the first go-round, so people should, if they want to get out and help put the lights up, then they should be the first one to offer their opinion while they're helping. If they're not going to help, then wait to see the finished product before they start talking.
I agree.
So-
But I
And
had positive, I had positive
And I
comments.
definitely agree, thanks to them, and the tree on top of Sugarloaf looks great. Another outstanding job.
Right, and I also had really, people were really happy with the cleaning of the roads. The first snowstorm, people I actually had 3 phone calls.
Better than 91?
People said that the roads were the best they've ever had.
So,
So whatever Sean is doing is a really good.
well, the team's doing, they're getting
Yeah, no.
tuned.
Mhm.
And they got on it fast, and,
Yeah, no, I had really positive feedback.
okay. We're done
Can I
with
just
that?
add, since you want a festive note, today we
Sure.
had a lovely visit from members of the Frontier Band. I guess they were going around doing caroling through musical instruments. They came and stopped by with Karen Atherton
Oh, how
and
nice.
played a couple tunes for us, and we took pictures because we all have little camera phones now. So, but it was very nice that they came by.
One thing that I think would be very good for us is for us to get some of this on FCAT. The chorus at Chandler's would have been great for people to see, that type of thing. And if we could capture some of that and get it onto FCAT as a spot would be fantastic, because basically there's not enough going around right now, so it would be fantastic. So.
Well, they're listening as you speak.
Wow, it's very nice.
Santa said we might be able to use his
Looks like
red
he's listening.
helicopter next time.
I said, it looks like he's listening.
No, he is. He's giving me signals there.
All right.
He's not the decider, though.
No, but if some people are using these camera phones, they can get it to us so we can get it in digital media to get on FCAT or on Deerfield TV. That would be
I
fantastic.
can show you right now if you want to see.
Give
Away
them
in
a
a
little-
Mac. I just got that much of it. Away in a Mac.
All right. We have a request to authorize the signing of the payroll and vendor warrants for the December 4th and the 18th and the 31st. I think that we're going to be signing the 4th and the 18th.
Yeah, you're just today signing the 18th. Remember, we discussed this, you wanted on the agenda a formal vote on having signed the
So-
warrant. So just to let you know, you've got the warrant.
Yeah.
I'll just read you what the amounts are, if you'd like, or if you'd like to read what the amounts are. This is for the warrant for today. This is the payroll and the vendor warrant you'll be signing today.
Yeah, we're going to review it and sign it. I think somebody already has.
But just
that.
if you wanted to
Take a vote
announce
on
for
it.
the purpose of the minutes the amount of the warrants themselves, you can do that.
We have a payroll. This is for the December 18th, 2013 warrant, W14-13. Payroll is $253,699.32. The vendors that we're paying out is $1,323,000 and $671.47. School budget was $145,183.69 for a grand total of $1,722,000 and $554.48. Put out by our county officer.
So I'll also give that to Priscilla, so she's got it right in there.
So, and that warrant's here, but in the past, we've made it so that we can have the board sign the December 31st warrant at their leisure after it's been
Yeah.
posted.
You're going to be meeting, we did schedule your next meeting for the 2nd,
Okay.
so that it'll be prepared for that, but if you, since it's a December 31st warrant, if you want to just vote that you'll be signing that
Signing
ahead
it
of
at your
time,
leisure.
and that you did sign the December 4th one already.
Right.
This is just keeping this new process
Okay,
going.
so I don't have the numbers for the December 4th.
No, you don't need
but-
the numbers for that.
Okay.
It's okay.
So, do
Make a
a-
motion that we have already signed the December 4th warrant. We are going to sign the December 18th warrant, and we will be signing the December 31st warrant
at our leisure,
at our leisure.
if the meeting doesn't happen.
Yeah, or at your meeting on the.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Make that unanimous, please. Sewer abatements.
Okay, it's just one, it was a mistaken billing, and there was a mistaken calculation, and it was brought to me.
I make a motion that we approve the sewer abatement for John Jankowski.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion?
Is this going to have any
Favor?
reflection on the sewer rates, being this far off?
No, I don't believe so. I was
Okay,
just told that there was, the bill itself was the miscalculation,
okay.
that it was,
Yeah.
a usage rate was mixed up with an
Yeah.
actual
Yeah, it was-
billing amount,
it
and
was-
that was the error.
Based upon previous year's application, this is a mistake that would have been out of that realm.
Yeah.
So, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Make that unanimous, please. We have the 2014 liquor licenses.
So you have the list in front of you, and I've got all of the licenses, which we can stamp. You don't have to sign.
The
if
question
you
I
want
have
to.
is, do we have a stamp with David's name on it?
Yes,
Did my stamp come in yet?
I believe so. You
Wasn't
don't
it-
think so?
I don't think so.
That's awful
Okay.
quick, we usually
I
don't
th-
get it.
Okay, I think,
Well, Pat, when I was in here yesterday,
mm,
Pat said it wasn't.
I wasn't, okay.
Well, I don't have, we can wait for the stamp, but if it's not in by the time it needs to be mailed, we'll have to come sign it.
I can
Yeah,
come, I can come sign it.
Okay.
if I
We
have
can
to.
stamp yours, though, if you want, and he can sign, or two is enough. You don't need to sign all three.
Okay.
All three, if,
As long as we vote it.
right, as long as you vote.
So we have, do I have a motion on the floor to, can I have a motion to approve the 2014 liquor licenses and use the stamp for Carolyn and myself?
I make that motion.
I'll second it.
And this is,
For discussion?
you've got this, so you've got that.
All
Yep.
those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Please make that unanimous.
We have the, we have, any license that has issues will be set aside, right, Wendy?
Yeah, there were two violations. It's attached, is it clipped to, there were a couple of,
There, yep,
you got that?
yep.
Okay. You want to talk about those?
No, that's all right. I mean, we can, we should pull them, I guess, if we, and then reconsider it.
Yeah, it's, well, or act on it after they're renewed, I guess.
I
Okay.
didn't,
I don't remember
We
the
haven't-
details of
I
what
didn't
the-
see that.
We haven't notified them of a hearing. We
No.
can't discuss it.
Yeah.
No.
We
Right.
need to go through our process, and if it's time dated, it has to be done in a certain amount of time, so
This
let's
this is new. This is a new one.
Yeah,
let's follow our process on that one, okay?
okay.
I didn't have a copy of those violations. I pulled it.
Did you get this, though?
Yes.
It should have been tacked. It wasn't, I'm sorry.
Nope.
All right.
Get that out.
Okay.
Deerfield River Liquors, Keno request.
You have the letter. Basically, the letter says if you object to this agent selling Keno, you must do so in writing within 21 days of receipt of this letter. If you do nothing, they'll get the Keno, unless some other kind of
Where is this?
Greenfield Street,
This is the one.
The keg.
The keg?
maybe.
Have we done any, have they got a liquor license from us? I would assume they did.
Yes, it was in here.
And it was an original or was it renewed?
I don't know. It
Have they
doesn't say
had,
whether it's renewal or not here.
They're not the spirit shop. I'm
No,
looking
they're
at
not
her
the
list
spirit
here, and I don't see anything that resembles.
It's probably under the keg, the license, they probably sold the license from the keg and cork and hasn't been
This
reapplied.
is the list. Can you see where it might be? I'm going to go through the
It's the Purple Meadow Ventures on the very bottom.
Is that it?
Mhm.
Okay.
On this list, it's
not on this one. Here it is up there. Why do we have two different lists?
I have that list too. This is just
You're
enough.
special.
That's because I took my folder ahead of time before she could update things.
Okay.
Are you saying you have more on the list that you've got than I
No,
have in front of me?
no.
Oh, okay. So
There's
is
more on
is
this
the
list.
Keno,
The Keno one's the Purple Meadow
Purple Meadow
Ventures
Ventures, okay.
Incorporated.
So do they have a Keno license now? Do you
No.
know?
No, this is a Keno to go. It's different than a Keno.
Okay. So it's the question is whether you want to weigh in on it, I guess.
I have no desire to weigh on it unless there's a legal, if the police have something in investigation, and they would only do the investigation if it was an initial permit. So,
The Lottery Commission investigates those.
Yeah.
so I don't have a problem with it.
I don't either.
So no comment?
No comment.
Okay.
We should push it by the police chief, because if it's to go, it means you're gonna have a lot more traffic.
Well, they must have a regular lottery license now for scratch
I would
tickets and everything.
guess.
That's the only way they'd get this.
So this is just a.
This just augments that.
Yeah, it's offering existing
It's not
non-pouring
it's not a-
agents.
They can't do it on premise. That's why it's to go.
Okay,
It's a lottery ticket.
okay. I have no problem.
Okay.
You can disregard the request of the chief, from my point of view. So what's the pleasure of the board?
I'm fine with that. I don't really, I
I
mean,
don't think you have to take a vote not to take action, so we'll let it pass.
Mhm.
yeah.
Very good. Annual permit renewals,
That is
go to the
for,
list.
yes, the general permit applications.
And it's all
Pool
in order?
table, jukebox, entertainment, yearly.
You have no
you
problem
have
with
this?
it? No, again,
Nope,
I don't frequent most of those places, so if you don't tell me they have a problem, I don't have a problem.
other than what you had from the liquor license.
We'll deal with those.
Okay.
They are
Vice
brand new,
process.
so.
So do you need a vote to approve them?
I make that motion?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Is that unanimous, please? Okay, Franklin County Regional and Planning Committee report.
So
Oh, this is the, our mutual aid agreement for sheltering plan and the public safety plan. I thought
yeah,
we
well,
already
I'm
voted.
separating them out.
Didn't we vote the police, public safety one
I
already?
guess it's a yearly thing. I was reading through it.
So we have to do it
The-
again? I thought we
Yeah.
just did it though.
The way I read this is a little bit different than the one John presented to us.
So
this-
John is Franklin County only,
Yeah.
and this is statewide. And
How is that different from the
Well, we have-
Homeland Security one that
Isn't
we
there
already
two here?
did?
There's a statewide and a Franklin County.
Well,
Yes.
Franklin County's for sheltering. and
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
sheltering,
statewide is for-
yeah.
there's
Yep.
three different things. Here's the
Yep.
sheltering one. What John brought to you before, we were the first out of the gate, was a different kind of,
Mutually.
I don't know, was it just Franklin or was it Franklin, Hampshire?
I thought it was just Franklin.
Okay, it was Franklin County mutual aid agreement. This is you adopted this at town meeting several years ago, this other, we're now talking about three things, but
Mhm.
you've got this, you have it in front of you, David?
Which one?
The MEMA one on the statewide,
Yeah.
okay. So I'm not sure if you have to do it yearly or why. I guess it's a yearly, sign the agreement, but you already opted in through town meeting vote. And this is for public safety and public works mutual aid.
Oh,
statewide.
maybe that's why we have to do it, because it includes the public works.
This
not
goes back to MEMA, the
Yeah.
Franklin one goes
All
back
right.
to MEMA. So take them
All
one
right.
at a time.
I think you're the one who
Okay.
has to sign it, Mark, I think.
And here's the
I'll make a
list of who's
motion.
in and who's not in.
Make a motion to, I'll request a motion to authorize the chair to sign the mutual aid agreement with the state, MEMA, dealing with highways and, what was the other portion of that?
Police and highways.
Was it police and highways? Okay.
This is all
make
public
that mo-
safety.
Yeah.
Not
Just-
public safety.
This is all, it's not just police department.
No, oh,
wait a
right.
minute, there was,
Well, no, there was a highway department one.
Yeah, it's right on, it's,
It says highway departments,
here
I
it is.
thought.
I have that. I thought you were going to do Franklin first. Okay.
Okay,
Because I have that first on the agenda.
All right.
The sheltering plan. Carolyn has
sheltering
that in
plan.
front
Yep.
of her, right?
yeah.
And that's just an amendment to the, addendum to the sheltering plan. That's one of them.
I'm on the Homeland Security that came up with the model for this. I was on that committee. And then I was on the REPC committee that worked together to put together the regional sheltering plan. So even though there's a lot of questions, like for reimbursement, we haven't sorted that out, how that's going to work. Greenfield has a lead on it. But whoever has the shelter in their town will file the claims. This is, at the moment, this is what we're thinking, is that, say there's a declared emergency, whoever has the shelter, whether it's Greenfield, Montague, or Deerfield, they would file the claims, and then the reimbursement goes to that town. And whatever associated expenses that are not covered would be billed to the participating communities based on the number of residents, a percentage that was part of the sheltering. So say there was 100 residents, or 100 people in the shelter, 20 of them are Deerfield. MEMA doesn't cover more than 80% of the reimbursement. So there's 20% uncovered. That 20%, we would own 20% because that was our percentage of residents in the shelter at the time. Does that sort of make sense?
Yeah.
we're paying for what we use.
Yes, we're paying for
But it's
whoever
not
shows up.
which is
The only
not
question I
reimbursed.
have, Carolyn, and,
Right.
maybe it's wrong, but the way they spelled it out, that say if we decide to shelter in place at the high school, that's a district. They get reimbursed, not the town.
The town, well, no, we would be running the shelter. The school district wouldn't be running
The school district would bill us for the use of their building. We would have
If
to
we have
submit it to the,
Okay.
Yeah, that would be
That's-
part of our, when we go to file the claim, if there was expenses that the school district was going to charge us for, then that would be part of our claim to MEMA. But the school district doesn't run the shelter. We would run the shelter if it's in our town.
Okay.
But the concept is, we want to do regional shelters and not do individual shelters, because the problem is, the Red Cross has only really the capacity to do 4 shelters.
Yep.
So in a major event like an Irene or a Sandy or a, blizzard, when you had all these shelters, we're actually gonna be responsible for running them. We're not gonna get Red Cross help because they don't have the capacity. So, until several days down, because they'll fly people in. But originally, we're gonna be stuck with it. So, running a shelter is quite complicated and costly. So the idea of regionalizing it, and most people shelter in place, truthfully. So the people that show up at the shelter are generally very needy people. You have medical and special needs a lot of times, and there's just a lot more complications with a shelter. So the idea is that we would pool our resources and have one really good shelter for the area, rather than everybody try to man their shelters and not have food and,
Yeah, part of the
stuff like
selling point for the shelter for fire station was that would be a shelter.
that. And that is a backup shelter. If you go to the, our Homeland Security site, or you go to the FERCog, or you just open up our SEMP plan, there's designated areas. There's Frontier, there's elementary school, there's a fire station. Our potential potential shelters. But they're ranked, and it's based on...
Based on need.
Yeah, it's based on need, where
Mhm.
if an area gets cut off by water, being cut off by water, that's why there's secondary and primary
Yeah.
locations.
You don't
But
need to do the statewide.
there's a
it's
whole
We don't need to do that?
list.
But you,
We do need
Okay.
to do that.
yeah, you already signed on. They just confused us by sending us a whole bunch of stuff, and you're already signed on to
Oh,
the
this is
statewide
your
one, so I'm not
signature.
going to have you sign that.
That's just,
This is the,
that's just shelter one.
That's, yeah, just the shelter. So forget the public safety, I kept trying to figure out, why are they sending that again? You've already signed on. You don't need to. The COG just sent it all out again, just because it was
Okay.
easier than sorting through who did and who didn't.
okay. Because I could have sworn we voted
You
that.
did?
Yeah, okay.
Do we move on?
Yes.
Yeah.
Did you vote
So-
at the emergency?
So you feel comfortable about this, Dave?
Well, I always felt comfortable about it. It's just, I was just, with the reimbursement,
The reimbursement is really
I know.
complicated. It
Yeah,
has
it's
to, we
just-
really have to work it out. But basically, there's always going to be an uncovered percentage that's not going to be covered. And we've all had a handshake agreement that depending on who signed in, what residence is going to be split that way.
okay.
Now, in Irene, Greenfield had a lot of Vermont people come in because Brattleboro was flooded out. So what happened in that case is that the state, Vermont paid Massachusetts, and then Massachusetts paid Greenfield ultimately for them. But we've worked...
With a handling charge.
Yeah. So...
So are we,
I guess there only is a place for one person to sign.
Yeah. So, do we have a motion, or do we not make a motion yet? I thought we made a motion to approve this.
we
Yeah,
made a motion.
okay.
David questioned before we seconded it.
Oh, okay.
You had a question, right? Can I have a second?
Second.
You're probably duplicating the
Mhm.
second of the
Fourth.
second, third of the fourth second. Any further discussion? And I guess the motion is to authorize the chair to sign.
Yes.
There's only one signature. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oops, print. Today is the 18th. Shouldn't have done that. You may want to get that re-signed. I'll pick it up at a later date.
Probably fine.
All right. So we did that one, we didn't need to do that.
Right.
We have a vote to sign the authorization online. Sign.
Here, you can read right from the memo there.
Oh, this is the thing on the back of the,
So I make a motion that we allow the chair of the Board of Selectmen to sign to allow Don Chappelle to submit electronically our reports for the wastewater treatment plant.
I'll second it.
any further discussion?
This is just because it's going digital now, right?
Right.
Yes,
So
they're requiring.
They're requiring it now.
Yeah.
I think Don had it digital for a long time.
I was going to say, they're giving it to him just in time to retire.
No, I think he's been using
Yeah.
electronic. They must, again, this must be just to get everybody, force everyone to do it.
Might
You
need
mean
more
my reading
magnifying glasses to
glasses?
see that one.
Yeah, it's great.
It's
I
very
just-
tiny.
No, I'm not so much.
These are
I just wanna
270.
make sure that
These are
it's.
275, so you can see just about anything.
Oh, I- yeah.
But I have to, although I need my glasses to tell.
was going to say, it's what happens when you get old, until you said that.
I should keep a pair on the table.
Oh, I'm signing
I've
for
got them
both
all
of
over the
them.
place.
Okay.
I think you have signed it twice.
Two different permits, one for Old Deerfield, one for South Deerfield. I was looking for, I thought one was sign here if you agree, so I didn't, don't sign here if you disagree. Okay, I can do this in red. We already voted that.
Here, sorry, I apologize.
Is this next one just an no, there's
Appointments.
appointments.
Oh, reserve funds. I do have reserve fund.
Oh, the reserve
Oh, I
fund.
missed that one.
The library, pulling that out for right now, a gauge broke on their lift. They had to have it fixed, has to be, but they can't find the part, and they were in a rush to get this done because they were re-inspecting, but they can't find the part to fix it, so it's off the table for right now. This may not be what they need, and it's ultimately, as you know, it's ultimately up to the Finance Committee. So, but we're pulling this for now, but it's on your agenda, but I'm just letting you know I'm pulling it because of that. But here, we've run out of postage for ZBA. It's been a very big year for hearings and this and that, and this is to replenish their account. Of course, it has to go to the Finance Committee, and they're not meeting.
I make a motion that we approve $700 for postage and mailing for the ZBA.
I approve. Second it.
Wow, that's,
Any
I think
further-
this is the first time they've
Any
ever
further
done that.
discussion?
Yeah.
That's what they're,
All those in favor?
Aye.
Make that unanimous, please.
It has been a really busy year, because
medical
I think,
marijuana, the Purveyor, it's been
Oh,
quite a few
yeah.
things.
I
thought
guess,
we got reimbursed when we post all that stuff.
Not for postage.
Well, what happens is it goes into the general fund.
Right.
Goes back in the general fund? So we're just
the
replenishing
fees we
something.
collect go
Yeah.
in the general fund.
Yeah.
So if you file a request, your $100 goes in the general fund or whatever it is, but
So we're just spending money that they have already.
probably, if
If
they've
taken
spent
these
the money,
permits, they've
yeah,
already
then,
got the
Yeah.
permits.
then
We're just-
we've already gotten the
We're
money
just taking the
back
money
in.
out of general fund and put it back into their usage.
Mhm.
It's just seed money.
I know, but that's the first time I've ever had that request.
Okay.
There is, sorry, I
Um,
didn't put this on. A
So we
letter
have
of-
CBA.
I'm sorry.
This
No,
was
no,
on
what?
hold.
A letter of support for the open space plan, but I'll put that on to next.
The next thing we have is appointments. We have the appointment of the Assistant Treasurer Collector, Sarah
Mission.
Mission. We had do you want background? I actually invited her to come tonight so you could meet her, but she couldn't come. She would have loved to have come. We had about 10, 15 candidates. We interviewed 7. We is Mary and Barbara and Michelle and myself, although I was sick the second day and missed the last 2, which included Sarah. And then Barbara and I jointly did reference checks. We had a couple of close candidates, but offered Sarah the job. She's very excited. She lives here in town, as it turns out, and references were very good. And she can start on the 30th.
Right?
So do we have to take a motion to appoint?
You're their pointers.
That's what I thought, so I didn't see something that we're supposed to sign.
No, I would send her a letter, a job offer letter, if you do appoint her tonight. I have that prepared to go out if you appoint her tonight.
I make a motion, we appoint Sarah Mission as Assistant Treasurer Collector.
We'll second it.
Does she have all the qualifications for that position?
Yeah, I pulled
'Cause
out the people.
Barb took a while to get up to be the Assistant Treasurer.
Mhm.
So just as long as she meets the minimum.
I pulled out those that didn't meet the minimum requirements.
Very good.
So she has a
Very good.
bachelor's degree.
Excellent. Any other comments or concerns?
No, just
Do we
welcome
have
aboard.
any grade and step on any of this?
It's
They're
whatever the
recommending-
grade is, I'm sorry right now, but it's step 1, or whatever you want to call it.
beginning.
Grade, isn't
It
it
is
grade?
literally step one. We have a scale, and it says
Step,
grades and steps.
right.
So,
And we're going to fix that
well.
someday. All right. That's been beat to death already. Thank you very much.
And just on that note, just, this is Mary's last week working as treasurer collector clerk. And we have a staff meeting tomorrow, and she'll be there. I hope. I told her it's only an hour, so if you'd like to stop by at 2:00.
No.
I know that's asking a lot, but maybe you'll see her another time, Dave.
Maybe.
But,
The, for her to come in next year to help with any questions on that, do we have to authorize anything? I know she can work up to 960 hours without affecting a county retirement, but
right.
as a board, do we have to look at that?
Well, I think, you mean from an ethics point of view?
Well, I'm just saying, it's just a short transition right now, and I'm assuming there's going to be quite a few questions coming up this coming year with Barb.
Right. If we would have a consulting contract with her, we could have that go before you.
And she could, we've got different examples of where
Janet's
Janice
helping.
Williams, has come in and helped and done stuff. If it's in their budget and.
I think Mary did put in a transition.
She
got
did.
transition,
She did.
there's money
She
in
put
there.
money into
And
cover those
there's money there, and
costs,
there's going to be money in the fact that.
The pay
There's going to be a
differential.
pay differential, plus
Right.
there's going to be time that positions aren't filled. So there's going to be money there, and I don't think to spend that money, we have to do anything other than have them coordinate between
Yeah, I think you're
our
okay.
office and their office and get it done.
Right, because it's not additional money, it's money that was
No,
already set aside.
I'm just asking the question, that it's kind of a,
Well, that's
it's
what
a delicate line, because she is my sister, so.
Right, well, the reality was, I talked with her because they were very upset, and I talked with Barb, and the indications we've done in the past was when they needed, we brought HAP in to do plowing and doing all sorts of stuff when he was out. As long as we didn't exceed the budget that was allowed, the department head has the right to get what they need to get the job done.
I
And
think,
we hope that we coordinate between the two offices to make sure that it
I'm
happens.
not sure what you mean by very upset, except if you were referring back to the time when there was anxiety because the time was approaching and we hadn't filled these positions. So I can
No,
say, my sense is the
It's
anxiety
something like the
level is
February
just.
7th anxiety?
No, this was at the very end of, within the last couple of weeks when they had to get all the bills out.
Right.
And they weren't sure they were going to get all the bills out, and they were scrambling trying to get it done, and I kept saying, stop. We can make things work. If it doesn't get done,
I say that
we'll
every
help it
day.
get it done. Don't get excited. And I told her, I gave these as examples. If we need to bring you in, we can bring you in, if that talent is needed.
We scramble every week to pay vendors every 2 weeks. I don't know if any town I've worked in has done that. 30 days,
I know, well, Janet
You're
set
very
the
good
bar
about
high.
that, yeah.
We have a really good fast turnaround.
So we're going to have, we have a little bit of this is the holidays, so it's a little bit of maybe there'll be some bills that are just going to have to go
Yes.
on the next warrant, not the next one, the one after that.
But we don't want it to become a habit. We want it to be.
No, we have right, we pay our bills.
We pay our bills.
We do.
So,
You did get a interest in the ZBA. I included that letter in your packet, I think. Mr. Camosa? Oh. But there's openings there. I would think that they would come to us. I haven't heard them say, help, we need to fill our seats. If they haven't come to me, at least.
well, we usually forward it to them, and they come back with
Right.
a recommendation.
Right, but what I mean is, they don't seem to be worried about having missing members. And I would think that they would say, help, please fill this, and that I haven't heard a word from them. If that's not true, Ron, let me know, but, and if you've got a recommendation, let us know.
Right.
So,
So we'll forward that request on.
okay.
And we're on to the Town Administrative Screening
Okay,
Committee.
here, I neglected to include it in your packet because I just did, and there it is. I've talked with you all several times, though, about this. This is a list of people who, for the most part, have stepped forward and said they'd like to serve on the committee, with the new addition of the superintendent who told me the other day she would like to. So it's for your consideration. I'm also recommending you appoint a chair of that committee so I can be staff and not have to take on out-of-role situation. And I'm recommending, and I did ask Joanne Carney if she would do that. I think it makes sense to have it be a member of the Personnel Board who chairs that effort.
And Joanne is willing to do this?
Yes, I twisted her arm a tiny bit. Tiny.
Do you want a formal motion?
Let
Or
you,
how
yeah,
do you want us
however
to
you
do
want to
it?
do
How
it.
do you want to do it, Mark?
The motion would be that we appoint Joanne Carney as the chair of the search committee, and the second motion that I would ask for is for us to formally accept the members presented, and we read them off and list them if everybody agrees, or if anybody feels there's an issue with any of them, that, and the number and, the general makeup. If you guys have questions, we should be talking through that process.
Okay. I'll make that motion.
So, the first motion, I'll take the first one, which is that we appoint
We
the
appoint-
chair,
Move
because
to
that's the first one.
appoint Joanne Carney as the chair for the screening committee.
Well, then I'll second it.
Any further discussion on that?
Yep.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Let's see if I can, unanimous. The second one is we have a cast of 6 more additional people to fulfill the committee. And then I guess I'm asking that if the motion be that we accept it as seven members or 9 members or whatever it is, and that we accept these to fill the roles or whatever the pleasure of the board is. I personally feel that 7 is good.
I'm fine with the screening committee. It's good range of experiences
Yeah.
and backgrounds.
Yeah, it's a good diverse group.
But I think
Do you want me to name them, or?
Well, I guess the question is, shouldn't you be on this list?
I'm
She
going to
wants
be staff. I'm staff. I'm not going to be, I guess you could make me an ad hoc non-voting, but I just as soon just be staff to the committee. You can make that in yours.
Okay.
Third or fourth motion. And then I do want to talk about.
With you being staff.
Okay.
Okay, with
So
with,
is,
and advisory staff,
Working staff,
or working staff. Okay.
making copies,
No,
doing what they need me to do.
pre-screen. We're looking for friendly.
They'll tell me what to do.
can we, she's told you what you want to do. Stop negotiating.
Pre-screen friendly people.
Well, you still have some pieces to do yet, and we'll talk about that in a minute, before we get to even their first meeting.
Traumatized, Mark. I want to make sure we have somebody friendly.
I'd like to know what the job description is right now before I get carried away.
I'll ask you.
Whether or not they have a friendly meter on them or not.
Friendly. Somebody that smiles once in a while. I'm sorry.
All
Mark.
right, so makeup of the board, 7 members, good?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. The board makeup, it looks like we've got personnel board, employees, former employees, the nonprofits, financial, and the schools. Any other members that,
I think it
We've
looks
left out
pretty
anybody
good.
that we've left out that should be here.
the only one that isn't on here that I'm a little concerned about is we don't have any true business representation.
Well, Tom Scanlon.
Well, John Pachork could be business.
Yeah, he's
Okay.
still running.
I mean, he still has his own business.
Keith Feiner is the chief financial officer for the academy.
We have a lot of financial, we have a lot of professional. We don't have the normal people that walk into that office being represented. Mary knows that office inside and out. We have Joanne Carney,
That
who's
office.
extremely professional, and we have John Paturk, who knows the office from being here. We have Sarah, who works with that
Yeah.
office on a regular
Well,
basis.
actually, she's,
We have Mary, who works with that office on a regular basis. Keith, who is a chief financial officer. Tom Scanlon, who's chief financial
you're
officer.
talking about an affordable housing type of a person,
I'm talking about just
Business.
a regular person.
regular person and a large person. I mean, right now, it looks like we got all the people who have special interests at the table without the normal people that office performs functions for. I don't do a lot of interaction in that
Well,
office, so I'm throwing it out as a food for thought discussion. It's not a,
I mean, one of the things you could do, and we did this when I was in Northfield, when I was the interim, is I put out a call, and, you know, to the public who might be interested in serving. But people knew, and that's why some people stepped forward.
well, this
Because
is
it's been
basic-
public, it's been in the newspaper, you know, so.
These are people that have,
Mhm.
that have worked with that office on a regular basis and have a vested interest on it. But we have nobody at large. There's not anybody on this thing that has a personal opinion, that doesn't already have a personal opinion walking into this arena. If you guys are all right with that, it's fine. I
Well,
just figured I'd bring it up for conversation.
I've said, since any conversation that we've had about this, that I would like to see, and I will promote this with this committee, a very public process. That they're the screening committee to, you know, who have responsibility to see it through, but that they set up something where the public at large can come in and meet, the finalists at least.
Yeah.
That they would be screening out those that, screening in those that would meet you know, a level of consideration for you.
Well, when we did the chief, we set it up as when we set up the committee, we dictated how we wanted to proceed through the process. And that had a very public flavor. It basically had 4 stages. They did a search. They whittled it down. We had meet the people. Then we had meet the employees that would be directly influenced by the chief. Then we had a public forum where everybody came together and asked questions of those 2 employees.
Did you like that process? You'd want to follow
I-
something like that?
I really like that, but we set that up before we selected, we knew what we were going to do before we started filling the role of how we were going to get there.
The different, who was going to be the screening committee.
So we had at large in the formula like you're talking. If we're going to follow that, then the search committee is just going through and doing
We
the
could
screening.
send that recommendation that process be followed.
Well, that- I
Joanne's
think that
fine,
was
'cause
Joanne
she was-
Kearney
she was
that
on
brought
that.
it to the table.
She was, yeah, she was
Joanne
chair.
was-
Just tell her that we really
I didn't know
appreciate.
that. I didn't know she was chair of the police committee when I asked her to do this.
Well, you can let her know that we really like.
We want to have public input.
Yeah.
We want the public to understand that this is not something that's done in a closed thought process, that basically we really are looking for the input from what the town wants and what the town's thinking.
And, I mean, the police search committee was really extensive, and I thought it was a long process. So maybe Joanne will, I mean, since she was the architect of that one to begin with, she would do the same thing, because it was appreciated.
So I guess,
The only positive thing about the list for me is looking at it. You know, there's probably a snowball's chance that these 7 would ever agree to the same thing. They're very diverse, and they'll
Yeah,
have their
but
own
you
opinions.
need
and-
to get
Yeah.
to get a majority in there somehow, and that's where the at-large people do.
Well, you got 7, so, you
Well,
know.
hopefully, despite differing opinions, they'll have, they're only going to whittle it down.
Right.
You
Right.
make the decision.
Yep.
So at least they will reach consensus, and doesn't mean I thoroughly and fully agree. It means I can live with this. That's the way I define consensus. And so hopefully, out of respect for each other's, listening to each other, they will reach consensus on at least
sure.
3 to 5 finalists or whatever to bring before you. A couple people raised, and I raised it directly with Tom Scanlon Jr. since he's as the town auditor. We contract with him. He's called the Ethics Commission, and he's been advised to file, and he will, a disclosure form with this board, since it's not a appointment, it's a contract. And also received advice that, just to make it clear, that you adopt a policy of making all of the people on this committee who are appointed to this committee special municipal employees.
Wow.
That would cover that just covers the basis
Okay.
for any kind of appearance of impropriety or conflict of interest with him serving as someone who does business with the town.
Okay.
Or you cannot put him on.
The problem I have is, when I took this position, the biggest issue we had with the EMS was that I was a member on the EMS. So we couldn't pay any money to me.
Right, you have to choose one or the other salary.
There wasn't a choice. It was that you had to pay, since there was no salary for the other one.
So
Oh,
it's
no,
like,
because he was a volunteer.
I was a volunteer.
okay,
And I couldn't collect any stipends because it was a conflict of interest, is what basically it boiled down to. So Mr. Scanlon, who collects money from us, if he is a special town employee, how does that exempt him from?
it's a different, it's a different
ahead.
aspect, it's a different segment of the law, that he's contracted, paid, independent, he's not an employee.
So
of the
he's not
town.
an employee of the town, as a
No,
contractor?
No,
Okay. I just want to make sure we're not setting ourselves
no, it's a
up for.
different element of the law.
And this is Junior.
Yeah, but his
Still, the contract's with him. He's, his,
It's his
He's-
business.
it's his business now, I think, so. Anyways, I have no problem with that. Does this mean that we have to come up with a policy, or do we just
No.
declare that we're calling them all special town employees?
I think you should adopt this language. Well, I noticed, I think you need to adopt better language overall for special municipal employees. It's something I started working on early on. It came up when I worked in Leverett, and I said, we need to do that here, because yours is old and it's not up to date. And so this is going to cover this situation, but before I go, I'd like to bring you something that will just stand you in good standing going forward
Okay.
in a general way.
Okay, so the second item I have on my agenda right now is that we appoint the 6 additional members to the board. I don't think we closed that loop, did we?
No.
The
I make a
motion was
motion.
on to appoint them and was seconded, and I had
We had
conversation about
discussions.
whether we wanted an at-large. I'd like to appoint them, but I would like to allow the committee to determine the total number, if they want at-large members.
So are you using this opportunity to allow for additional people to step forward that?
To offer their
Consideration
services,
for
but
appointment.
I would like to let the board, we're happy with the board the way it is. The committee, the group that we've got together right now, we're happy. We'll let the board decide if they want any large members to a dish, if not to limit the number, let them limit the number beyond the ones we appoint at this point in time. Does that make sense? Okay. So, as I understand it, we have a motion on the table that's been seconded to appoint the 6 additional members on the list. John Pachura, Sarah Woodbury, Mary Stakarsky, Keith Fine, Tom Scanlon Jr., and Marty Barrett to the search committee for the town administrator. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. The last thing we need is to adopt the designation of all members of the search committee to be special municipal employees. Do I have a motion?
I make that motion.
Do I have a
Second it.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anything more on that? Wendy?
Well, just related to that, Personnel Board was going to sort of finish up and meet with you on Friday last night, but everything got canceled because of the weather. They're meeting on the 26th, a week from tomorrow, to get back to that. And they have a couple other agenda items as well. Actually, now they're down to 2. And working on the job description. And I thought perhaps you're scheduled to meet your next meeting, if it works. I think I've heard from you all that, maybe not you, Dave, January 2nd?
January 2nd.
Next, since the 1st is not a good day to meet, I could make meeting with them. They seem open to this idea, like a time to have that conversation about the job description
Okay.
on your agenda, and keep it kind of, no?
I'm sorry, I missed. My
Since they
brain
didn't
went.
meet last night.
Right, but my brain went back to, and again, it's been a very busy couple of 3 days for me in many fronts. But I thought I got a call from the chair asking why we weren't going to have the meeting on Friday, to have a joint meeting to do what we were going to do between these 2 meetings of yesterday and today on Friday at 4 o'clock or 4:30. And did
Right,
that
and
not
I had
work
just
out?
talked with you earlier about that.
Right, but
And-
he called me after you called, and he was going to get back in touch with you
He
to
did.
see if it was okay to just stay on the agenda. That's his choice. He wanted, I have no problem with it. I didn't know if the other ones could not, to stay on task with that meeting on Friday.
Yeah, it's been canceled. The point was to have that meeting follow their discussion last night, which didn't happen. So they would bring that to you at your meeting.
So they're going to have a meeting on the 26th.
They're going to meet on the 26th, and then they'll come to your meeting on the 2nd,
Second.
which we will reserve plenty of time for.
Which is what we were going to do last night to
It would have been Friday, but they didn't meet last night, so there was no
So they're
finish.
gonna meet the
They hadn't
26th.
finished enough of their work to have a coherent discussion with you on
Okay.
Friday. So that was the point.
His discussion with me was that they had gotten to it. There was very little left to be done, and that having the meeting would have been just as fruitful as this Friday. But it's canceled.
That wasn't the conversation I had with him.
Sure they've met. They've met 3 times on the subject. From what I understand.
Once.
Once,
Yeah.
okay, once,
And they were supposed, last night would have been the 2nd.
So, and, yeah, Friday would have been the 3rd, so, yeah, we were going to have 3 meetings on it. They just wanted to combine the 2 and make it 2, but, I'm pushing because we don't have Wendy for very long.
I know.
And this is going to take time, and the biggest bottleneck to me right now is to determine what this job description looks like. So if we're going to push this thing off till the 26th and the 2nd, then the 2nd come to the table fully prepared because we're out of time. We took a lot of time out of the window by waiting that long. So hopefully whatever they get us, I'm going to put a request into the Personnel Committee that whatever comes out of their meeting on next week, we get it so we can fully digest it and not have it hit us cold on
The
the 2nd.
Yeah, Joanne usually does the minutes right away at that night of the meeting, so
But
they can get
again,
forwarded right to you.
If they've got,
Are they
if
working
they
off
have issues or discussions.
Are they working off your
I don't know
copy?
what there were. I brought stuff to them. What I told you I did, I took what exists and has existed for a long time. I took all the fluff stuff, that stuff that DOR said was just messy and unnecessary. I took most of that out. I plopped in their simple things. I highlighted the things that I thought were issues for people. And that's what I handed them. And I think I also emailed that to you. And They're also working off other examples. Marie has gathered things from other communities. They've got other information that they are working with as well.
Is it possible after their meeting on the 26th that we could get a hard copy of what they've done?
I don't
That's the
see why not.
request I'm gonna put into
Yeah,
that.
that's what I hear Mark saying.
Why don't we just post it as a joint meeting then?
No, because they
With
at the
that-
beginning requested their space to do their work, and I respect that in the process. So that's the reason we had this process, but they can invite us, and I'll gladly, through Wendy, tell them if they want to put a formal request to us, show up on the, but are you available?
26th, yeah.
On the 26th, that would be fine. But if they need their space, then let's let them have their space in the process. One thing I would like to have is I would like to have a formal job description, or my understanding is state DLR has a description of what a town administrator is. Is that correct, Sadie?
They gave us a sample. There are hundreds of samples you could use,
But-
and you could craft, you have crafted your own.
Right. But I'm, in doing my research for this process, I'm finding a whole bunch of titles.
Right.
You know, not only do we have this and the new buzzword or the new title that I'm bumping up against all the time is coordinator.
That's not the same, is it? What is it,
Not
town
very
coordinator?
town coordinator.
Coordinator is what small towns have been using when they don't want to have a bylaw. And they, they're generally diminished
Okay.
jobs, not the level of what this job is. I know few people who have that title. They're very few. But
Oh,
town administrator is a catch-all that can be anything from administrative assistant, the board is really heavily involved in daily, to more almost beyond somewhat town managers do. It's a generic term, and it's as powerful as whatever the job description says, or if you choose to have a bylaw, which I meant to check out. I don't know whether Northfield did that at their town meeting. I believe that they adopted a bylaw. So they accepted the statute, or they created a bylaw based on the statute, which allows you to adopt a bylaw to create the position. You've just done it by having it as a position, just like other positions that are, here. Those are the options. And that was presented in the report. And that's your decision.
Yeah.
You want to do it that way.
the-
There isn't time right now to do that. You can't, I mean, if you wanted to go to a bylaw, that's something you can talk about after this process.
The reason I have to disagree with you to a point, because I've stopped at 4 different towns and had to deal with the town staff and such, and asked them what the titles were. And in the 4 towns, and they went from 2,000 to 4,000 in population, which isn't that far below us. 3 of them, the title was coordinator.
Is this all in Massachusetts?
2 in Massachusetts and 1 in New Hampshire. So, and looking at them for time spent, number of people in office, working, how they related and everything else, they're not that big of a difference, so I don't know why.
What is the difference to you? Why does it matter, the title, whether it's coordinator or administrator? I'm just curious.
I'm wrestling, my biggest issue is the fact that everybody's telling me that it's a strong versus weak component, and I can't put them into definitions. I can't hold up this example and say this is what this is and this is what that is. So I've kind of thrown that out and said, okay, what do I really want? And what I want is, because we're at that threshold of 5,000 people, not 10,000 people or 15,000 people that are, which are the bigger small towns or the bigger towns in
or the small cities, whatever you want to call them, where they have the money and resources to have a lot of people floating around there. I need to know what the town needs, and I want that position to represent what the town needs, not what everybody's opinion of what the town needs. So by going out and trying to talk to different towns, and I didn't go looking for this terminology or this thing. I went looking for what do you do and how do you do it, and does it work, and is it a good model for me to look at? And I'm finding there's not a lot of difference. The only big difference I have is that most of them in the coordinator's position do not talk about having hiring and firing and departments reporting directly to them. They are an administrative function of the Board of Selectmen to dictate what needs to be done, and when it's not done, either have marching orders to do the job or go get marching orders to go do the job. It seems to be that's the only sticking point, and there is whether department heads report to a town administrator or not is the biggest thing I'm looking at. And I'm waiting for the personnel committee to tell me what they think is right or wrong. But if you asked, then I'm just trying to get some brains in so that I'm prepared to discuss it. Because I am serious about hammering out some of the things. And one of the things we want to do is performance appraisals. It needs to get fixed. I said this last time, and it didn't get fixed. It needs to get fixed and understood so that people know what their job is. They know what's expected of them. I'm not looking for something that I can hang on the wall that looks pretty. I'm looking for something that's effectively written to make that work. And to basically perform services to the town at the level which we can afford to provide. It's not magic. It's not witchcraft. It's just, here's what we can do, and this is what we can afford, and make them match. So I was curious if there was some help in the terminology. I wasn't looking to change the title. I'm looking at, is there something else out there, like here's the basket that fits in with administrator, and here's the one that fits in with coordinator, and are there things here that would help us work through the process? That's where I was coming from. So.
Back to you.
Back to us for what?
It's your
We've got everything off the
you
table
answered
voted,
you
right?
Responded to my question.
The last thing we have is a
Oh.
report from you.
Well, that's
But-
part of it.
we were gonna
Council,
take that
the
off.
tobacco regulate, sorry, okay.
I thought we were going to take your report off. I thought that this whole thing
No, it
constitutes.
just gives me an opportunity to talk about things that didn't get onto the agenda for timing or for other things like that.
Oh, is that legal?
Yes, it is.
Come on. Okay, well, leave it on then.
Because I have, I will have, as I go forward in my next several weeks, more things to sort of tell you. But the health, the smoking regulations finally got back. I'm still waiting for one of them back from
Smoking or
council.
tobacco?
This is the sale of tobacco products. Council did have some changes. Cheryl and Mary have seen them. You've already signed them, but I'm going to have you sign them again because I'll tell you what the changes were. Rather than use the term e-cigarette, given where as Cheryl said so eloquently at the meeting, where the industry is going with these things, Council recommended we use the term nicotine delivery system, which would cover anything that's coming down the pike that we don't even know about at this point.
Okay.
And
I thought that was a big change.
the
Or
other thing
okay
is, we had this whole online discussion, because you currently have a bylaw, the bylaws are what govern your tobacco enforcement right now. This is a Board of Health regulation. Board of Health regulations are very strong and very powerful, and if they're more restrictive, you can override your bylaw by this. I believe it's council's perspective that this is more restrictive than your current bylaw, so as of January 1st, this will be effective. I'll have you sign it again.
Do we have to
language.
formally remove the bylaw?
You will have at town
town
meeting,
meeting.
that'll be on my exit memo, just reminder of things. Yes, you will have to do that,
Why?
but right now,
If it supersedes it, why do we have to?
because it's
It's
confusing.
a good confusion, it's a
confusing.
good thing for housekeeping, but it's not necessary
Yeah.
because that takes precedence.
Well, it takes precedent, but we know that, but I think someone who just went to read our code and didn't look at our Board of Health regs wouldn't. It's a cleaner, and we really should do that. No big deal. So, the other thing is the other regs, I'm waiting back from council on them. I have the comments back, but I'm waiting for them to tell me, are they in fact more restrictive, because it is not that clear. And so I sent an email and saying, please, are these more restrictive? And then I'll have those back for you to sign and get those implemented, if that's the case.
I make
Does
a
that make
motion-
sense to you? Okay, it's a little
ma-
convoluted stuff.
I make a motion that we reapprove the sale of tobacco and nicotine delivery products regulations due to the change in language.
I'll
or
second it.
definition of language.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Make that unanimous, please. Even though she's already signed it before she
Well,
authorized it.
we already voted this, and I think the language change was actually a good change.
Carolyn,
You don't sign something before you vote it.
simple. There are no justifications.
Hey, you've been signing warrants for years, and you're finally voting them, so.
That's because you put this obscure step in front of us,
Yeah.
and they're
Well,
voting for it.
you asked me about that.
And you said it was a way to do it, so we're going
Said,
for it.
if you want to do it, we'll do
We're
it.
going to backdate it? I mean, come
You
on.
did, you did. Okay.
Listen,
So-
Carolyn, you backdated something we already signed. But as we're approving something that's already been on the signature
This
block.
is so signed. It is so signed. Okay. So you will, hopefully by the next meeting, I'll have the other environmental tobaccos,
Okay.
the ETS for you.
Thank you.
And,
I really appreciate you running them by
okay.
council. That was nice
Yeah,
of
this
you.
has been very time consuming, but it's thorough. Your next meeting is the 26th, okay, at 6:30? That
The
works?
26th?
I'm sorry,
January 2nd.
January 2nd, sorry, the next meeting of the personnel is the 26th, and you are
January 2nd.
January, yeah, 1-2, I have that backwards. Okay. Do you want to set other meetings at this point? Are you back to your usual schedule, just every other week, so the Wednesday? I have a calendar here.
Is January, if we had met January 1st, was that the warrant?
Yeah.
the correct
So
warrant?
she knows you're going to meet on the 2nd, so it'll be
Okay.
prepared.
So,
So then you would be on January 15th,
yes.
if you want to keep to that schedule, on January 29th?
Yes,
Okay.
Okay.
because that misses the conference.
Yeah, we don't go to the conference till Thursday.
The week of the between them. It's a 20, what's the week between the 20?
It's
It's a President's Weekend usually, so I'm not going.
You're not
Can I
going to
see-
the
can I
MMA,
see
Coco?
that?
No, I'm afraid I'll get a job that I don't want.
But you said you already had a job.
I do, that's why, sort of. So the next meetings will be, what did I say, January
23rd
15th?
and 24th.
And the 29th. Okay, and you're all set up to go to the MMA. The Board of Oversight was, for the EMS, was canceled last night as well because of the weather, and it's rescheduled for tomorrow night. I'm going to go.
I'm good.
Dave, you're going to go? Okay.
Yeah, can I get on the,
Matt, I think, is going to go as well.
can I get on the distribution list?
I think I've been,
I didn't
anything
get,
I
I didn't
get.
get.
Actually, no, okay.
There's stuff you wouldn't get because it was a subcommittee,
Yeah,
so.
but, I mean, this is the regular meeting.
Yeah, the regular meeting should be on, you should be on it for the regular meeting.
I think I'll ask
You could be on,
Dave Zamoyski about that since he's.
you could be on the
facilitator.
subcommittee too.
What else? I think I had one little more thing. Oh, just to announce, the Community Preservation Committee is now accepting proposals for the 2014 cycle of awards. They're due March 1st, and the application is online at our website. Go to our website, look on the website for pages, then /index, and clicking on boards and committees, and you'll find it. If you have trouble, call the office and we'll help you find it. They're updating the form, but for now, the form that's been used, which is online, is usable, and you can download that and fill it out. Main categories of funding: historic preservation, open space, recreation, and affordable housing. And they're going to be reviewed by the committee, and recommendations will be for the April annual town meeting. Okay?
Mhm.
They just asked me to announce that. Anything you can think ahead you wouldn't want on your agenda next time?
Well, I'm going to go on record right now so that people can be thinking about this. That CPA funding it's not a limited pot of money, and we've been kind of squirreling some money away to do some senior housing type projects. It's now become widely known that this pot of money is there, and it will diminish quickly if it goes to things that are nice to do but not necessarily in the town. So as this becomes more popular, I think the Board of Selectmen is going to have to set some guidelines as to how we want to consider and set priorities for where this money is going to be spent. Because if we don't, it's going to go fast. It's, there are certain percentages have to go to certain things, but the reality of it is,
Well, this 70% of it is unallocated.
but fine, if we don't,
Yeah.
we'll never have anything to do any of the bigger projects with if we
I
blow
agree.
it on everything in their brothers, and it's been offered up from everything from tennis courts to things. So I personally, if we're going to finally get some initiative to do some affordable housing or do some planning in that aspect, then we're going to need a war chest to make that work.
I think that's what we're trying to do.
When I was in Leverett, the board itself put together an application, and that's something we could do if you want to look at that.
That's a good idea.
possibility.
I need some more information as to what.
Yeah, well,
The board wouldn't have
Two
to approve any
well, two
expenditures
things-
of this anyways?
Town meeting.
Go town meeting vote.
town meeting.
Town
If you
meeting
get a
vote.
bunch of people that challenge it and just take it to town meeting, they can raid the thing and.
Yeah, but it also has to fall within the guidelines.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
it's like the
Right.
tennis,
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like the tennis court.
Well,
You know,
you
that
have
would never
to-
fly under CPA because they lock them. So that means the public can't use them.
Unless they unlock them, and then they can do it, and
It's history I'm not that aware of, but.
So,
Well, I think what Mark is saying is that there is a set aside of 10% for the housing, but there is 70% that is unallocated, and that we're counting on that 70% to go, or part of that 70% to go with the 10%.
yeah.
And that's going to be our
Well,
little
whatever-
I can
pot.
tell you
Whatever.
what they did in Leverett,
Yeah.
housing-wise. Well, non-housing-wise, the selectmen asked the committee for money to do restoration work to the town hall. It's a beautiful old building, and they had some arguments about it, but I think they basically did get some money for historic preservation purposes. But they also set up a housing trust fund, and I can get you information about that. They also, they had a committee working for 10 years on a senior, but it got sort of out of hand. The selectmen kind of pulled the plug on them after they spent a lot of money. They were going to do a senior eco-village. And it really wasn't a feasible project in terms of the siting. They couldn't find land for a long time, but they had spent a lot of time on a consultant. But meantime, one of the members of the board was on this housing trust, which you can, set aside money to do. And I think they set up a program to do that kind of thing that was being talked about to help seniors with their homes, with adapting them for, either accessibility or just improvements, whatever. We can look at many models for that.
Right.
But
And I
if
mean,
there's
there's-
no one else, it could come from the board, and you could set up some kind of a,
Right. And I mean, you could set up a
administrative structure.
revolving fund to help these
Exactly.
people, and basically, if they need and they can't do,
Mhm.
they can use, some of it's paid back at
right?
the
Sale
selling
of
of
the
the
house.
property, selling of the property and things.
In fact, we could have, since you've had the Housing Authority do that through the Housing Rehab Program, you could I can't speak for them, but I know that other agencies like them that administer block grant monies will take CPC monies and administer them similarly because they know the whole way to set it up and they know the financial guidelines and all of that kind of stuff. So that's an option.
In some of that, so, I mean,
That's
I
an
would like to have a
option.
plan. I would like to look at it and say, rather than, okay, once everybody's taken it, then we shoulda, coulda, woulda, it's
Right.
too late. Let's look at what it is and plan this and help them put some guidelines in
Right.
place as to how to work with it.
So if you want, I could get more information about this housing trust, which actually starts pooling the money together so you can do some real meaningful.
Now, does the housing trust, are they a 501c3?
Nope, they're just, that's the name of the money.
It's the
But
money.
it's actually,
like
you just
stabilization
appoint,
fund.
it could be you.
So then, now, did they partner up with a private or group or entity that could build housing?
I don't know
Like a
what they've done
contractor?
since I've been there. At that point, they were mostly accumulating money, and they were using some of that money for that committee that was doing this on and on and on, you know.
Because we were thinking of, my thought was, if, the housing authority can't get someone to build something, if we have the land and we have a pot of money,
Right.
why don't we get somebody to build something?
Right. I think that's all within the realm of possibility. I think if you go on the CPA website and go under housing, there are incredible numbers of models of
Right.
what communities have done
Okay.
across the state.
Well, it's
And,
just,
that should have been in the housing report as well.
I know, I mean, it seems like literally half of my committee has passed, and I think it's gross that we have still no senior housing since we started meeting. We were joking, I'll be a senior before we get housing. And by God, it's true, and that's just, it really bothers me that we have not been able to get senior housing yet.
Well,
It
we'll
just,
see what comes in with these proposals too. I don't.
it seems like something we should be able to do.
Mhm.
I mean, we've been committed to try to do that, and it just hasn't happened. And to me, it's ridiculous. I mean, it's one thing, there was, before, people didn't want it in town.
Well, sometimes some communities, maybe you discuss this, form local housing authorities. But that's such a big deal.
That's
Yeah.
such a big deal,
Yeah.
and more
I don't
rigmarole.
recommend it. I don't
It's
recommend
more,
it.
it's just so much work and rigmarole.
Do you have a question, Mark?
Yeah, have we changed the structure of these things?
Well, we have a new accountant, so maybe, is this the warrant?
Yeah.
Perhaps you might be a little
It's the
different.
same stuff,
Yeah, but we used to have, like, this one's got a grand total.
yeah.
So I could generally run
I
through
mean-
my mind where we were and how we were doing. This one,
Oh, there's no total.
there's no total for the amount.
Oh, it's individual totals.
Everything's totaled, so I have to go through and do some sort
Yeah.
of, and it's not the format I'm used to.
All right, do you want me to talk with her about that?
It may be that because there's so many of them that she may have run an extra report. Because this one's exactly.
It's a duplicate?
Yeah, and one's in one format and one's in another.
Right.
Usually we only get 4, and it looks like we got 6 or something here.
The,
It's 4 here.
There's 6
There
total.
was no particular explanation given to me, so I can,
So I mean, like this one here does exactly what I normally do, is I look at, okay, here is internal revenues, this is just, this is our vendor, where everything's going to, Channing Beat, and it's, $1.4 million, which is high. So I can look at this and say, okay,
what are we looking at?
What are we doing?
Yeah.
he's eager to.
to get out of here? Yes. Anything else before the board? Hearing nothing, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn with the signing of the warrant.
I make that motion.
I'll second it.
So again, if you're,
Further discussion? Hearing none, all
I'm
those in
just-
favor?
I wanted you to save that, in case someone look at, I have a copy already.
How much was the scholarships for Yankee Candle?